Dropping that culture. 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 Dropping that culture.
Dropping that culture. I love our theme song. Welcome to another edition of Dropping That Culture with JD and AJ. I'm JD.
And I'm AJ.
And we are back again with another beautiful week here in the 2020. We had a lot of fun things that have happened personally, especially for me this past week, acting wise. Actually, I've gotten a lot of gigs, folks. I've been working a lot lately as an actor, which is always really good. But I know I've been in this thing long enough to know this doesn't last unless I get that one thing that is a recurring, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm really enjoying what's going on right now. I just did a couple episodes of a show on Oxygen. I can't say the name. And also just got picked to do a music video and also a promo for Disney Plus. So a lot of things happening on the acting front. I'm very happy about that. And mutual things going on here.
You know what they say about overnight successes, don't you?
Yeah, they take time.
Take a hell of a long time.
They take a long time. So I'm working on it.
Everybody who's in right now, they get to be here for the journey.
Got to put in on the work, man. Got to put in the work. You got to play to win. To quote Tyrone Bickles, got to play to win.
Hey, you're not lazy, that's for sure.
You're damn right I'm not. Yeah. So let's go ahead and dive right into this thing. So we're
before we jump.
Okay. Oh, okay. What, just interrupt me. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean that's what we do.
Yeah. Fuck
What are you smoking tonight?
Well, I'm not smoking tonight. I think I just had the label here. Oh yeah. So one thing we don't really advertise on the show as much as we should is that the fact we usually are smoking cigars when we're doing these shows. So the one I'm smoking this evening is actually a Esteban Carreras.
Nice. Very good.
And a Habano. So it's really good.
I enjoy the Esteban.
Very, very, very smooth. I enjoy them very much too. Good pricing.
Mm-hmm.
I always found it a couple places that I like to frequent one night, and yeah, I really enjoy the smoke.
I've got an H. Upman Magnum 50 here. It's actually Cuban.
Yeah.
And that was from our friend Naomi.
Oh, really?
So shout out to Naomi.
Nice.
Appreciate it. This is a killer stick.
Yeah, we got to do that more, man. We got to do more, promoting the sticks on here because we are cigar aficionados. We love cigars, and
100%.
It always goes with us talking movies. Like whenever we really get into the deep dives and we have a lot of fun, we're usually smoking a cigar when we do it.
We're definitely smoking a cigar when we do it.
All right. Now, like I was saying before, I was so rudely but understandably interrupted. Let's go ahead and go into our first segment of the show. Another favorite of the show here, Dropping That Culture. That would be 7 Degrees of Eddie Murphy, where I can connect any major American film star to the great Eddie Murphy within 7 films. Usually, I try to get it in within 2 or 3. And like I said, it's a variation of 6 Degrees with Kevin Bacon. Now, what names do you have for me this week, AJ?
Alicia Silverstone.
Good choice. Alicia Silverstone. Oh, easy. Alicia Silverstone was in Clueless with Stacey Dash. Stacey Dash was in Mo Money with Damon Wayans. Damon Wayans was in Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you got on Harrison Ford?
Ooh, good. All right. Harrison Ford. Super easy. Harrison Ford was in. Actually, I'm trying to see if I can go that other route. Boom. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna go Landis route on this one. Harrison Ford was in Raiders of the Lost Ark with Karen Allen. Karen Allen was in Animal House with John Belushi. John Belushi was in The Blues Brothers with Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd was in Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. Everyone I just did now is a John Landis movie.
That was actually very impressive.
Thank you, sir. Except for Raiders, but all of them are John Landis movies.
But Steven Spielberg was in a Landis film, so it works.
Yes, he was in The Blues Brothers, so it connects. It all connects. One more. Give me one more, man. Come on.
Steve Buscemi.
Deep cut. Oh, that's super easy. Steve Buscemi was in Con Air with Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle was in The Native Professor with Eddie Murphy. Remember, Dave Chappelle was in Con Air.
Yeah. I was wondering if you're going to catch that, if it was going to slide by.
No, Con Air, baby. I've seen Con Air, baby.
I know you've seen Con Air, but I mean, look, everybody in there, he's got the smallest part.
Yeah.
I mean, old Bubba Gump's in there dying of diabetes the whole time, which none of that makes any sense.
Ving Rhames and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, all them motherfuckers in there.
Exactly.
But really, the star of the shit is John Malkovich and Nicolas Cage's bullshit Southern accent. Mm-hmm. What? Where? Jimmy Fallon does a really good impression of what? Where? Nicolas Cage. All right, so we got 3 names down. I thought it was a pretty good one. You know what I'm saying? So let's move this thing right along. Let's go to another favorite segment of the show, WWBS. What will Busey say? Now, what subject matter do you have for Busey this week?
I'm going to keep it topical. What are Gary Busey's feelings about the Super Bowl?
Okay. All right, here we go.
I'm not even going to go to halftime show, just the Super Bowl.
All right. The Super Bowl. Biggest game of the year. Everybody who's anybody is watching the Super Bowl. I always have a little Super Bowl party at my Quonset hut. You know, I have different little accoutrements I like to put in there. Motor oil. I might throw some food in there. Electric cattle prods just for entertainment's sake. Every time you do like a field goal, you get hit with a cattle prod. That's how we work, man. I love the Super Bowl. But every year, at least every other year, it's always a bullshit game. So slow, so monotonous. It's like almost like a really bullshit preseason game that just happens to have a lot of people watching it. And sometimes it really gets on my fucking nerves. But this one, this past year, was actually pretty goddamn good. We had the Kansas City Chiefs. And we had the 49ers. Now, the 49ers have been to the bowl before. They've won the bowl before. But Kansas City hasn't been there, 50 years? So it was nice to see, the underdog come in and get down. Plus, I'm a big fan of Andy Reid. At one point we had the same barber. So, I really appreciate Andy Reid. And I do enjoy the Super Bowl overall. I also enjoy the halftime show. Yeah, it was really nice here. I really like the Latin flavor that they had this year with the Shakira and Jennifer Lopez and those pole working skills, buddy. I wish you worked my pole. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was nice looking at that, man. But the last time I actually looked at a Super Bowl halftime show, I believe it was the Michael Jackson one, like in 92. That was crazy, man. I was supposed to be in that thing. You know that? Yeah, there was one point where they're like, they had this giant globe, it's like the world or whatever. I was supposed to be in that thing. Yeah, it's supposed to be Gary and the world. It would have made a lot more sense once you've seen it. But I thought it would have been great. But for some reason, they just went with the world and the kids and all that bullshit. It's whatever, man. But I always love a good Super Bowl, man. Tiger blood. How's that?
It was less terrifying than Chicago.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good.
Chicago was fun, though.
Chicago was fun.
All right, now let's go ahead and get into dropping the news. But before that, we have our sponsor. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and take a listen to our sponsor, and then we'll come back with dropping that news.
Hey! Pizza, motherfucker, I'm gonna kick your
Canadian Carl here. So do you have feelings of anger often mixed with rage, eh? Well, if people often upset you, that's not so good. But at Canadian Carl's, I can teach you how to have a healthier outlook, eh? So, instead of calling that feller who cut you off there in traffic an effing a-hole, but maybe you got your kids in the back seat of your car there, you could simply take a deep breath and maybe count to 10, and then you could say something like, "Geez, that guy's a hoser, eh?" For more tips on training on how to control your rage, you can go to Canadian Carl's School of Anger Management. We're actually supported by the Canadian government of Manitoba. Okay, hope I didn't upset ya just a little bit there, just trying to help ya. Canadian Carl is a proud sponsor of the culture dropping that JD and AJ do. Okay, bye-bye. Dropping that news.
Dropping that news. Be honest with you, there hasn't really been that much news. Really, the big thing that's been happening for the last at least day or two was the Super Bowl spots. Now, usually the Super Bowl is a big platform where a lot of movie studios like to put out their big content. Wasn't that many this year, to be honest with you. those are a few. Like I don't really recall any of the really funny commercials. I had to work during most of it, so I caught little glimpses here and there. The ones I do remember, there was one for the new Bond movie, No Time to Die. So there's that.
We've seen it.
Yeah, and there's the same thing with actually pretty much all the major spots in terms of movies we pretty much have seen. Like they did the final thing for Mulan, which we've already seen. They did the thing for Black Widow, same thing already seen. Top Gun, Maverick. The one that really stuck out in terms of the TV spots was the one that Marvel Studios put out for the Disney Plus shows, particularly 3 shows: Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Loki. Now, the one I was kind of the most iffy about in terms of the shows was WandaVision, but I saw what they're doing. I think it might be pretty interesting. From what I saw in the commercial, like I said, it was only a 30-second spot, but it was pretty provocative for what it was. From what I'm seeing is that they're going to be using like sitcoms as like a vehicle for that particular show, and you see Wanda and the Vision interacting in different sitcoms. Like you see at one point they're like doing like a Dick Van Dyke Show type deal, black and white. Another one you see them like doing the 70s Brady Bunch Get Down, and then one last one you see them like in from what I saw was either they did one that was Roseanne and the other one I think was Family Ties. Yeah, because like the Vision had the
interesting selection.
Yeah, Vision had on the Michael Gross flannel going on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was like, whoa, okay. All right, but yeah, so it looks like they're gonna be doing like different shows. From the looks of it, the whole thing might be in Scarlet Witch's head because there's been a kind of recurring theme with that character is her mental health issues. So the whole thing might be in her head. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we might find that out on the show. Also, Falcon and the Winter Soldier looks like it's following the storyline that I said earlier about the whole Black Captain America thing. And it looks like there's one dope spot where they actually introduced the new white Captain America. The government went at like a football game or whatever. So
Super Bowl.
It might be. You never know on that show. It might be. So. That looks cool. And then Loki was very quick. It's just him like sitting in some prison uniform talking about, I will burn this place to the ground. That kind of shit. But that's the one that got the most response. From what I see on the internet, that's the one that everybody was looking for the most.
You know what? I didn't even get to watch all of it. I had a whole bunch of other stuff I was doing that day. But the one that I've seen the most is the Jason Momoa one.
Oh, yeah. That's the one that everybody
comes
can tell.
in, he starts taking off his arms and everything.
Yeah, I saw little bits and pieces of it. I didn't actually see the whole thing. But yeah, I saw that a lot. Everybody's like, this Jason Momoa commercials got me in my feelings or something. Like, was it really emotional? No. It
was ridiculous. So it was a Rocket Mortgage commercial.
Mm-hmm.
He comes home and like he's taking off his big arms and everything. And like he gets to be himself at home. And he basically goes from being like, big buff superhero guy to like skinny little dude.
Yeah. Good for Jason Momoa. Show him who you really are, Jason. But yeah, that's the big thing that's going on. Also, another thing that I saw, which I thought was interesting, that the Pee Wee Herman wants
Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah, they want Pee Wee Herman wants the dudes that did the Adam Sandler movie Uncut Gems because he really liked that movie to do a dark Pee Wee Herman movie. I think it'd be interesting because, like, if you watch some of the earlier stuff of Pee Wee Herman, it was very dark and adult. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially he was doing like adult. He catered towards kids now, but like, his initial stuff was more adult. Like he was on Cheech and Chong movies, and he was doing stuff with the Blues Brothers, and he was on HBO, and the HBO original show, the Pee Wee Herman show, was a very adult. So I'm interested to see how they go with that. Yeah, and then of course there's a couple of reboots in the works right now. One I saw was for The Crow, which look, be honest with you, I like the aesthetics of The Crow, and like I saw a couple Brandon Lee movies before he passed away. So he was like one of those cable guys. He used to be on like cable kung fu movies and shit.
100%.
Yeah, but I never was a huge fan of it. Like I'm like when I see The Crow, I'm not gonna say, oh my god, I'm gonna stop what I'm doing and watch The Crow. But there's a remake in works, apparently, a reboot. So people like that. And also one that I saw as early as yesterday was talking about Rick Moranis coming back
I was reading about that
for a Honey I Shrunk the Kids reboot. Now they've said this kind of shit before, especially when they try to do reboot Ghostbusters. Like, my thing is this: I will be excited once I see Rick Moranis on set. Until then,
because he refused to have anything to do with Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly. So We'll see, man. Like, and for those of you not aware of the whole situation with Rick Moranis, Rick Moranis in the 80s and 90s, he was one of the bigger stars, especially comedy, in Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? He was, very popular, a lot of great movies. He did like what was that? Yeah. He did movies like, My Blue Heaven and, Parenthood. And then the bigger ones, Ghostbusters, Little Shop of Horrors,
Well, I mean, probably the biggest single movie for launching him was Strange Brew.
Strange Brew, and
Which,
of course,
if you're a fan of the commercial and sponsored, that made a lot more sense.
And of course, the mega hit "Honey, I Shrunk the Kids."
Yeah, 100%.
And the movies that came with that. So to see him back with
Honey, I Blew Up the Kids.
Honey, I Blew Up the Kids. I think the last major credit that he had was for that movie Brother Bear.
Oh yeah.
Because they did the Mackenzies.
Yep.
Yeah, it's two bears, and it was voiced by Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, and they were doing the Mackenzie brothers, basically as bears.
Yep.
The Canadian bears.
Well, I mean, it works.
Yes, it did. It worked
If
very
you're
well.
Canadians, do bears or do moose?
True. Yeah. All right. So yeah.
Mooses.
Oh, don't. Let's not start this debate here. Come on. But yeah, that's basically all I got for dropping the news. Unless you got anything.
That'll do it.
All right. So dropping that news.
Dropping that news.
All right, so let's get back into the deep dive that we're doing here this week. We're doing part 2 of our expose on the great John Landis and his films. Now, last time we cut off right in the middle of Coming to America. We're really getting into that one.
Well, the good news is we've got 92% battery life as we start right now.
All right.
So it shouldn't be an issue.
Damn right. Let's go. Let's get into it. Now, one thing I want to get into is the actual fight that Landis and Eddie Murphy had on the set of Coming to America that kind of propagated this whole thing. Now, initially, during the shoot, John Landis kept hearing from people that they weren't getting their money, and he pretty much told them, why don't you tell Eddie Murphy to give you your money? I mean, that's bullshit. And Eddie Murphy was clearly angry because Landis was giving him this attitude, especially after Eddie vouched for him to get hired for this particular show.
Right, because he was in a bad way.
Yes, he was. So what happened was, this is how Eddie describes it: I playfully grabbed him around the throat.
You want to try that?
No. I put my arm around him and I said to Fruity, one of my guys, that's one of his bodyguards. He said, "What happens when people put my business in the street?" And Fruity said, "They get fucked up." So it's kind of half joking. Landis reached down and tried to grab my dick, also because he thought it was a joke, and I cut off his air. So he fell down, his face turned red, his eyes watered up like a bitch, and he ran off the set. Fucking punk. This Eddie's quote. So Eddie then
No, to
went
be fair,
yeah.
Eddie's like 23.
Yeah.
Or 24 when this happens. I mean, he's a young kid.
No, I think he's more like 25-ish.
He's still a young kid, man. I mean, you know what it was. I mean, you think back. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
Think back to shit I did in my 20s.
Yeah, I did.
Late teens. Because you got to remember, Eddie Murphy never even really had that experience that you have as a 20-something-year-old, where you have somebody put you in your place, so to speak, and you go, okay, I'm not hot shit. He literally went from being a 17-year-old kid doing stand-up to a fucking rock star Elvis status overnight. So
more or less, yeah.
You got to understand he doesn't have the same connection with reality the rest of us do.
True. And then he went on to say in the same interview that apparently Landis came to his trailer the next day and he made this big speech. His voice was trembling, and it all came out. He said that he didn't think I was talented. He also saw that the only reason he was doing the movie was for money, and that he didn't respect me because I hadn't gone to his trial and all that bullshit and all this fucking shit. He called me ignorant, an asshole, and that was the actual fight that they had. So
yeah,
I can see where there's a issue there.
What's crazy is that you could have that fight during the filming and still get the movie done. Because normally when stuff goes that bad between your star and a director, it's over.
True. Yeah.
I mean, the only time that I've seen it end in a way that the movie still got made that I can think of aside from this is Barbed Wire, and they fired that guy.
Also, if you ever seen the behind the scenes of Bram Stoker's Dracula?
No, I haven't.
Look at that shit. Him, Francis Ford Coppola and Gary Oldman had some button heads moments. You can see a couple times that Gary Oldman walked off set because they were going at it so much.
Now, wasn't it Frank Oz that was on the score? Wasn't he the director?
The score?
Yeah, with Marlon Brando and De Niro and...
I believe so, but
Because whoever the director was, and I think it was Frank Oz, but whoever the director was, I remember listening to them. They were talking about that, and he grew up watching Brando movies. Brando was his hero and all this stuff. So his expectation, this is one of the things that I remember them teaching us, and his expectation was that here's the guy who, like, he can't be shaken. Like, he's an acting god, essentially, right?
True.
And so he came in, and he wasn't very supportive at first, or at all, really, of Brando, and Brando felt really slighted and hurt, and it became such a problem. The only way they got the movie done was the director was essentially banned from the set when Brando was shooting, and De Niro directed Brando. That's how they got it done.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, and I don't remember exactly how he managed to get over this, but this fight in particular, it's insane. I mean, first of all, coming to America, we're going to go deep on a lot of insanity with this project, but that right there is crazy to me.
Yes, it is. Yeah. All right.
I mean, you're an actor.
Yeah, I know. I've had some issues with directors too because they tend to be, the only time I had a real issue with a director was I was doing a play actually out here in Hollywood. Play called The Adventures of Superman, and I played the villain. And the thing about it is they were like touting that this guy's like this Academy Award winning director. He did win an Academy Award, but I think it's for like a short film. And
Probably.
Yeah, probably. And you know what I'm saying? He was like talking about I'm a visionary, I'm this, I'm that, or whatever. But his whole get down was basically to take this 1940s radio play and to make it gay. So he basically developed homosexual relationships with all the main leads. So it's like Superman, Batman, Robin, they were all homosexual. I was essentially the only straight guy in the scene, and I was the villain.
Okay.
So, yeah. But he just kept like, because he kept messing with the actors and so like, okay, you know what? Spice it up, make it gay. He just kept doing that. I'm like, that's your great vision. So
I mean, look, everybody's entitled to whatever they want to go for, and stuff fails just as often, if not more often, than it succeeds.
yeah,
But I mean, it also depends on timing too, right? Because you look at some of the shit that was made in the 80s, some of the shit that's made now, 90s. Everything is thematic because one thing that is true in this town.
yeah.
Somebody somewhere is the opinion leader, and everybody gets in lockstep and they follow behind. And I mean, making all the characters gay and go in that direction, that was a thing for a while. I mean, you saw it in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It
is what it is. All right. Well, moving on. Now, for the famous dance sequence at the beginning of the movie where they have the whole ceremony in Zamunda, the choreographer for this movie was Paula Abdul. Famous singer and, of course, former judge of American Idol. And at the time, she was dating Arsenio Hall. So, I'm sure that helped.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't hurt.
No, I'm sure. Well, you know what they're into. And also going to since we're talking about the kingdom, the king and queen, Madge Sinclair and James Earl Jones, also played king and queen again years later in The Lion King.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, they were Mufasa and Sarabi. They were Simba's parents.
Yep.
Yeah. So they had, and also since we're talking about voice acting, stop. since we're talking about voice acting, Arsenio Hall himself voiced Winston Zedmore on The Real Ghostbusters.
Oh, really?
A role that was written originally for Eddie Murphy.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was the voice of Winston on the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters.
All right.
Yeah, I love that cartoon, man.
Yeah, it was a good cartoon.
Yes, it was. And also, the subway station that you see when they have the big, thing with Lisa and Akeem, that same subway station is the same subway station from the Michael Jackson Bad video.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, which featured Wesley Snipes, who is in the sequel to Coming to America.
John Landis knows his way around a subway station. Go back to the same one. Directors shoot the same place all the time.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Just look at Back to the Future.
Oh yeah. Also, one of the famous little things of dialogue in the movie is the whole thing about Joe Louis and the Rocky Mountain.
Yeah.
There they go. Every time I start talking about boxing, a white man got to pull Rocky Marciano out of his ass. That's they won. Rocky Marciano. I'm telling you right now. Rocky Marciano good, but compared to Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano ain't shit. He beat Joe Louis' ass. Oh yeah, that's right. He did with Joe Louis' ass. Joe Louis 75 years old when he fought. I don't care how old he was. Got his ass whooped. So that actual fight actually happened in 1951. And actually, at the time, Joe Louis was 37 years old, and Rocky Marciano was 28.
Same thing in boxing.
More or less, yeah.
It's basically like fighting a 75-year-old. I mean, the one thing I will say, if both fighters are trained, because I saw a video the other day of a dude who's like 75 boxing some like 25, 30-year-old who was way better shape, did not know shit about boxing, and this old man beat the hell out of him. I mean, he knocked him down twice.
Another famous video, there's this dude named Charlie G, I think that's his name. He was like some internet troll who would like go around to like LA fitnesses around here, prompting people to do like boxing matches. Oh,
I know the one.
Yeah, he was the one. He was actually really fighting them. He was just telling them this is a friendly exhibition. But, he was really...
He'd bully him.
Yeah, he was really trying to fight him. Well, one particular session shows him going up against older Floyd Mayweather Sr., and Floyd Mayweather Sr. whooped his ass. But then...
He beats the hell out of him.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, he's had the cheap shot Floyd Sr., and they say, you got Floyd Jr. and everybody else coming to whoop his ass. And the most
It's a great video.
And the most famous one, and the one that really made him stop, was he went up against current heavyweight champion of the world, Deontay Wilder. Now, he went on the internet saying that, hey, he was talking about Deontay's family, particularly his daughter, and he actually came up on Deontay and Deontay whooped his ass.
Well, look.
He got what he deserved.
People often ask, what happened to Jackass? Why did it go away? Because it was so big. They had the movies and everything. It went to the internet, and there was just too much competition. When you have people going up starting shit with the heavyweight champ of the world.
Fucking idiot.
What's the point of watching, like, Steve-O staple something to his ass? Like, you're not going to get any more ridiculous than watching a guy pick a fight with somebody who could literally kill him with one shot to the face.
And since we're talking about real-life sporting events happening, there's another famous scene in Coming to America where Akeem and the dad are trying to bond. He's like, sir, did you watch the professional contest on television last night? No, I didn't. Oh, it was most exhilarating. The Giants of New York took on the Packers of Green Bay. And in the end, the Giants triumphed by kicking an oblong ball made of pigskin through a big H. It was a most ripping victory. Now, that actual game actually happened in 85. And the score was 23-20, Giants. And it's the same thing. It was a field goal that got it in there. So that actual event actually happened.
Well, it's nice when they actually pull from reality. It helps minimize the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. And this other fact I looked up, this is kind of reaching here, but if you look behind at the McDowell's party where everybody's like dressed up and they're having like the engagement thing, there's a painting of a Black Panther behind the character of Daryl when he's talking to Akeem at the bar, and everybody's like alluding to Black Panther as in the Black Panther character, and then of course the fictional character, the fictional nation of Wakanda and Zamunda, the same likenesses there.
They sound similar.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Now there are actually a couple of cameos in Coming to America. One is kind of like under the radar. In that same party scene, we see Reverend Brown talking about, I love the Lord. You understand what I'm saying? I love the Lord. And loving the Lord is wrong. I want to be right. Now, the two people he talking to, one of them is Lisa, the other one is a white guy. The white guy is Toby Hooper.
Oh, really?
The director, yeah.
Oh, I totally missed that.
Director of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Toby Hooper. Yeah.
That's funny. I have to watch that again.
Yeah. And, of course, the most famous cameo in that movie, Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici reprising their roles as Mortimer and Randolph Duke from Trading Places. Now, it's a little scene where, it's a lovely thing where Akeem and Lisa are strolling along the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't know why they would do that. Apparently, it was freezing fucking cold, too.
Apparently, that's what you do when you're being romantic and you're from Zamunda.
In New York, yeah. So, at one point, he gives these two homeless dudes this big bag of money, and you see the two homeless dudes are Randolph and Mortimer, and they're still mad at each other from the events of Trading Places. So like, Randolph, leave me alone, Mortimer. Randolph, I'm still not talking to you. Look, and you see the money. He's like, Mortimer, we're back. Yeah. And the great irony of that is, Eddie Murphy is the one that put him out of business in Trading Places,
right?
And Eddie Murphy is the same one that put him back in.
Which, if you listen to our podcast Pitch Room, you'll actually hear how we use that to try to build out a Trading Places sequel.
Yeah.
And actually, there's another cameo in there that only turns out to be a cameo because of the way history works out. But that was Cuba Gooding Jr., who's getting his hair cut when they first go by the barber shop the first time. So, I mean, that kind of counts, only in that, he went on to be an Oscar winner.
I think we mentioned a little bit of that last time.
Yeah, possibly, but just to make sure we got in since we're talking cameos.
All right, cool. Now, let's go ahead and go to the release. Now, the movie itself was released on June 29th of 1988 by Paramount in the United States. It was, of course, a commercial and commercial box office hit, both domestically and worldwide. It debuted at number one with a haul of $21 million and 2,000 screens. Total 5-day run of it was $28 million, basically. The movie itself made over $128 million in the U.S. and ended up having an overall worldwide total of $288 million, and it's actually the highest grossing film that year for Paramount, and the third highest grossing film of the U.S. that year. And to this date, as of 2020, it is still John Landis' highest grossing movie.
Which kind of worked out well when the litigation came around.
Yes, it did. Yeah. All right. Now, do you have any other facts for Coming to America?
No, I think we got through most of them last time, just so we're not repetitive.
Yeah. And also, just one little thing that I remembered about the flower girls, the ones I was spraying the flowers.
bathers.
Yeah. So 2 of them were going to be actresses with really good careers. One of them, Victoria Rowell, she's the one, your royal penis is clean, Your Highness, her. The one thing I remember her most is she was the secretary on Spin City. The Michael J.
That's
Fox.
right.
She was the secretary. Yeah, she was the mayor's secretary, yep.
Which, nothing against Charlie Sheen, but the Michael J. Fox was the best.
Yeah, she started out as Michael J. Fox's secretary. Then she got moved up to the mayor, Barry Bostwick's secretary. Yeah. And also the other flower girl, Garcelle Beauvais, also went on to a stellar career, most notably because of the fact she was Fancy on the Jamie Foxx show, on the WB. She was the main love interest on that show. And she's done a bunch of different things, music videos, TV shows. I remember seeing her on an episode of The Fresh Prince. And also the most recent thing I've seen her in is actually she's in the MCU. She actually plays the wife of Michael Keaton's character in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Oh, really?
And she's also the mother of the love interest in that movie, Liz. So
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
So she's been around, man, and she's still going. So good for her.
I mean,
man.
honestly, there was a lot of people, their career essentially launched out of there.
And also from what I saw, she's going to be in the sequel as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Now, Coming to America, of course, really permeated with black culture. Now,
Well, and
Yeah.
actually, just as an aside, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who plays Daryl.
Eric LaSalle.
Yeah, and he ended up, anybody who watched TV in the 90s, he's on ER.
ER, yeah.
Huge on ER.
And the most recent thing I saw him in was in another Marvel movie, Logan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a great
He
job.
was great
Logan.
in that, yeah.
He was great in Logan, yeah.
Logan, honestly, just as a brief aside, we'll have to get into this more depth some other time, but that was probably the seminal comic book movie to really open up everything else we got. I mean, you can make an argument about Dark Knight and how Nolan somehow avoided getting a rating R on The Dark Knight, but I'd say that was when they finally took it to a new level for me.
To me personally, that movie, Logan, is actually, in terms of somebody who's read the comics, that is the closest they have ever gotten to the comic book version of Wolverine. He was not a nice guy. He wasn't as noble as
They made him in the X-Men?
Yeah, basically. So, yeah, he was, he kind of his own thing.
Yeah.
He's a loner, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think they really got it good. Unfortunately, it was the last time that Hugh Jackman will play him as of now. So,
Unless they bring him back somehow, revive him, use the Gauntlet or whatever.
yeah. But like I said, the Coming to America movie itself, of course, has permeated a lot in black culture, particularly a lot of rappers and different people like to use samples of the music from Coming to America or sets inspired by Coming to America. Most notably, the Busta Rhymes video, Put Your Hands Where Your Eyes Can See, that one. The whole video is basically Coming to America. And Action Bronson's song Baby Blue also is pretty much a pictorial of that movie. And one big thing that I saw is Jay-Z and Beyonce like to do themed parties. And one particular year, I think it was Halloween or something like that, they all dressed up like characters from Coming to America.
All right.
So yeah, the movie is very, very, very popular. You know what I'm saying?
Killer movie.
Oh yeah. Now that we go ahead and got that down, let's move
moving
on to our next one. And this is a big favorite of mine. This is today still my favorite horror movie ever. An American Werewolf in London.
It's killer.
I love this movie so much. It's so good. Now, John Landis himself wrote the screenplay for this movie when he was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. We talked about Kelly's Heroes in the past show about John Landis. Now, during that time frame, he was actually traveling along the countryside in Yugoslavia, and while they were driving, they happened upon an actual gypsy funeral. So they had the gypsy people out there, and they were burying this body that was wrapped in garlands and wrapped in like a canvas in garland, and they were burying it feet first, 6 feet deep. And John Landis, not knowing what's going on, was like, why y'all doing that? Why y'all burying him like that? And they basically said, we're burying him this way so he does not get up and cause trouble. He's like, what you mean get up? Like a zombie get up? Like, yeah. Get up. But then, like, apparently the Yugoslav driver was a dude named Sasha. He thought it was hilarious. He was just laughing his ass off. How these stupid ass gypsies doing this stupid thing. But Landis himself got intrigued by the issue. And he's like, what if he did come back?
Yeah.
So he sat down and wrote this screenplay. And basically, from his own perspective, what if a kid his age, at that particular time with the counterculture and everything that's going on, what if he happened upon this supernatural experience? You know what I'm saying? Your friend, somebody dies, somebody dies, and all of a sudden they're back from the dead. And that was like the catalyst for this, wonderful framework of a movie. So apparently he finished the first draft of the movie in 1969, and he shelved it for over a decade. Now, 2 years later, he did the movie Schlocked, with Rick Baker. That was his first movie. He wrote and directed it himself. And during that time frame, he was telling Rick Baker that, hey, my next movie, it's going to be an American Werewolf in London, and I want to do this transformation. It's going to be great. Now he's basically telling him the concept of what he wanted to Rick Baker, and and he's like, Rick, can you do that? He said, well, I would need some time and some money. So they had a lot of time and a lot of money because, it was nearly a decade before the movie actually got made, you know what I'm saying? So, and then both of them went on to great careers. Rick was doing different movies Octoman, and he was doing of course the Star Wars thing, the Cantina thing. That's him. The Thing with Two Heads. All these different movies, and of course John himself is going on to his stellar career with the Blues Brothers and Animal House. And after 3 successive hits, the Kentucky Fried Movie, Animal House, and the Blues Brothers came in, he was able to secure the money that he needed from Polygraph Pictures to make this werewolf movie. And the one common thing that people were telling him about the script, because he used it sort of like a living resume, is what he could do.
It's like a calling card.
Yeah, but the common thing that people kept saying was, this is either too scary to be funny or too funny to be scary. And a lot of people just could not get the fact that you could be both.
Right.
And it's, in that aspect, it's a very revolutionary movie because it was kind of the first of its kind. Well, the horror comedy actually had been around for a minute, but it wasn't a popular thing.
Right.
The most popular one and the most prevalent one, especially in that particular time frame, was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Those movies.
But I mean, that was pure comedy that had horror tropes for a backdrop.
Yeah, so Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Abbott and Costello Meet The Invisible Man, things of that nature, though. So those movies have been around, and then of course the whole Ghost Breakers, Ghost Chasers type movies or whatever, they had been around for a minute. So. And when he was actually doing a documentary on it, this is an exact quote from John Landis. He's like, see, it's not a comedy. People keep calling it a comedy. It's a very funny, I hope. It's a horror movie, though. We meet these guys in a truckload of sheep, basically giving the metaphor that these guys are lambs to slaughter. So he said it's not subtle. And both of these guys are dead before the end of the movie. This is not a happy tale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
we're not doing Zombieland where they all get away at the end.
Exactly. Yeah. Both of these guys are dead. They're the main guys. And the reason that he chose London as a setting, because of the fact he thought himself, this is the exact quote from him, London is horror central. And of course, home of Jack the Ripper, Jekyll and Hyde. So I wanted all that Victorian Gothic, and I also wanted to show, real London in 1981.
Well, and it's I mean, if you've been there, it's a dark town. There's lots of dark alleys. I mean, it's perfect fodder for a horror backdrop.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the main inspiration for the movie would be the 1940s movie The Wolfman with Lon Chaney, the original one, which is still my favorite classic horror movie too. I love werewolf movies, man. That's my favorite. That's my favorite sub-genre of horror is the werewolf movie.
You watch Underworld all the time?
I really don't like Underworld though. I don't like Underworld.
People who are true werewolf fans don't.
Yeah, it's too. I don't know. It's too weird.
The lichens.
Yeah, it's too weird and stylish. I guess but like yeah.
It's basically if Cyberpunk were to do a werewolf movie.
Yeah, and I don't really dig. I don't like Twilight shit either, where he just jumps in there and turns to a big ass dog. I don't like that shit.
Yeah, I never watched any of it, but I was fortunate enough. My sister, who watches all those kinds of things, she even told me, was like, "Nah, it's garbage. I hate it. The book's so much better." Blah blah. Blah. I was like, "Well, if you hate it, then I'm sure I'm not gonna like it."
That is literally what it is. He just jumps in the air and turns into like a giant sized dog.
Well, and I mean, just since we're talking about the transformation, Rick Baker and his work on this to do the transformation, the amount of detail and everything that went into it. I hope this isn't blowing your spot up too much, but
Not really.
it earned him the first Academy Award for makeup, which that category was actually created in '81.
Yeah, actually, and the thing about it was because the main thing that really started the debate for that category was a movie that happened the year before that, The Elephant Man.
Yep.
I am not an animal. I am a human being. The makeup effects they used in that movie was so stellar. Like, dude, you should win an award for this.
And yet we still don't have one for stunts.
Yeah,
But that's a whole nother podcast.
that is true. So going back to the Wolfman thing, he said basically his inspiration was The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney, which is unusual, unusually portrays the werewolf as the victim. You know, films tend to show the transformation from man to wolf through lap dissolves. And what I wanted to do is capture how painful the entire process would be and make it painful to watch. Although the film does have a lot of comedy, I wanted to treat the violence realistically, to make it as terrible and violent as possible. And in terms of the actual casting, initially, the producers of this movie, John Peters and Peter Guber, who were going to do God knows how many hit movies.
Still.
Yeah, they still do, yeah. And, I believe John Peters is like married to somebody hot right now. Really hot. Oh, Pam Anderson.
Okay.
They got married, which is okay. But, he married Pam Anderson. But, yeah, they initially wanted, of course, Landis Stables, Dan Aykroyd, and John Belushi for Jack and David. Yeah, but Landis wanted new faces, and he also felt that both of them were a little too old for what he's trying to portray.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have worked. I mean, it has to be guys that are like 19, 20.
Yeah, and because we talked about Rick Baker earlier, like I said, Landis had been telling him this is going to be my next movie, but things happened, and it took about 10 years for the actual movie to get made. During that time frame, Rick Baker got tired of waiting, and basically decided to use some of the plans that he designed for that particular movie to use for another werewolf movie that was filming around the same time, The Howling by Joe Dante, which is another favorite of mine. Mm-hmm. I love that movie. And eventually Landis called Baker. He's like, "Hey, I got the money for we're gonna make a werewolf." He's like, I'm kind of already doing a werewolf movie. What you mean? Like, I'm doing The Howling with Joe Dante. He's like, "You didn't show him the stuff that you showed me, did you?" Well, yeah. He's like, "You motherfucker!" Apparently, Landis just like cussed his ass out. "You motherfucker piece of shit." Okay. But Rick
we can do something different.
Yeah, Rick was able to calm him down. He's like, "Okay, look, well, I made the commitment to you a long time ago. We said we're gonna do it together. Okay, we're gonna do it together. I kind of started stuff already, but I have a protege. I can give the movie to him. He kind of is under my same mold too, and it'll be same but different." And that protege, another favorite of mine, Rob Bottin. Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing that Rob Bottin ever did, RoboCop.
Oh yeah,
he designed the suit for RoboCop and all the special effects in that movie, and also The Thing, another one of my favorite horror movies.
Yep,
that stuff right there is just revolutionary. So
100%.
So Rob Bottin took over the special effects for The Howling, and Rick Baker went to go do An American Werewolf, and it worked out very well for both guys.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So after that, Rick and John initially had disagreements over the design of the actual werewolf itself. Rick Baker wanted to be the traditional two-legged werewolf, because he thought it'd be easier. He always thought
it would definitely be easier for him.
Yeah, he always thought of werewolves as being bipedal, but John Landis wanted a four-legged hound from hell, an exact quote. And okay, so we have to figure it out. And actually, the final look of the werewolf was actually based on Rick Baker's quiche hound.
Yep. Yeah. Very hairy.
Yeah. And
it looks very wolf-like anyway.
Exactly. So Rick Baker's exact quote was, which is a quiche hound, which is a hairier dog and almost wolf-like. A lot of times I look in the mirror and I make faces, or I'll be kind of working on sculptures, and it looks like me and my dog are there, and like it was okay. He kind of looks like a wolf. He has 4 legs. He has this big mane of hair, which is like wolf-like. And I saw, so the wolf is very much based on my dog, Bosco.
Which just has to make you feel good at night, going to bed with Bosco looking at you.
Yeah. Okay, now in terms of the production of the film, they only allowed 4 American work permits.
Yep.
The director, John Landis, makeup artist, Rick Baker, and the 2 stars, David Naughton and Griffin Dunn. That's it. The rest of it was basically all...
It's a very British production. It's probably the most British-American film ever.
Exactly, yeah. And at one point, they were having disagreements with the people in Britain, and he thought, you know what? I say, the hell with it. I'll just take it out of London, and I'll make it an American Werewolf in Paris. And he's like... But officially, there would be an American Werewolf in Paris. And
later.
It was a travesty for his own right. What? Yeah, no, the movie's not good. The movie's not good. And I hate the fact that people consider it a successor to American Werewolf in London. I don't like it. I'm sorry. Now, much of the cast itself, particularly John Woodbane and some of the other people, were actually... Most of the British cast were actually in a production of Nicholas Nickleby at the same time of doing the movie. So most of those people that you have in that movie, most of the main British people that are talking, were in the production of Nicholas Nickleby.
All right.
Yeah, so good for them.
You know, kind of a funny little aside on this one that I didn't know, but apparently a lot of people they must have paid more attention to directors back in the day than they do now, especially, if it's anything other than a marquee name. But apparently people thought they were going to see a comedy because of the success of Animal House, and I think it was during about the first transformation when they realized it was a horror movie. People actually got so scared they ran out of the theater.
Yeah, the thing about it is they promoted it as movie brought to you from the director of Animal House.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So everybody was thinking, this is going to be, I love Animal House. This is going to be funny. And then you watch the movie, it's like, this ain't funny.
No. But to be fair,
yeah,
it's a very funny movie, but it's gallows humor, right?
Yeah, very dark humor.
It's a very specific genre of humor.
Yeah. Now, one of the prevalent things throughout the movie is the fake porno that they have in the movie. See you next Wednesday. Now, the See You Next Wednesday, the actual porno movie, was the first thing they ever did in terms of the production. That's the first thing they filmed was the porno. So, hey.
It's a light day.
So it's a movie within a movie. You know what I'm saying?
They do that all the time. I was in a movie within a movie, but it wasn't no porno.
Right.
I was a dead person.
Oh, gotcha. I got you. I yet to play a dead person.
Well, so I basically had died of like some weird medical illness or something. It was a short film we did.
No, actually, I take that back. I was killed in a music video.
There you go.
By a mutant.
By a mutant?
Yeah, I was supposed to be like this I was supposed to be a bouncer in this futuristic bar, and this mutant guy comes in trying to save a girl. I stop the girl, and he bludgeons me to death with like a blackjack.
I hope the next time you get killed in a movie, you can get killed by John Wick as a bouncer.
That'd be dope.
That'd be cool. I'd be on board with that.
Now, the main star of the movie was David Naughton. Now, David, at the time, was known as the pitch man for Dr. Pepper. Mm-hmm. And we actually have a Dr. Pepper right in front of us. So,
in fact,
pop the top on that Dr. Pepper, man. So basically in the late 70s, there's this very popular campaign, the I'm a Pepper campaign. You know what I'm saying?
I'm a Pepper.
And it would show David Naughton dancing around in different locations, holding a Dr. Pepper and singing about, I'm a Pepper, you're a Pepper, she's a Pepper, he's a Pepper, wouldn't you like to be a Pepper too? Dr. Pepper, Dr. Pepper.
Back when everything had to have a theme song.
But it was very popular. Yeah. It was very, very popular. So, John Landis loved those commercials, and he thought David Naughton would be perfect for his role.
Probably another reason people thought it was a comedy.
Unfortunately, David Naughton was actually let go by Dr. Pepper because of the nude scenes he has in this movie.
Although they were very careful not to get any full frontal during the transformation scenes, which was difficult since, they literally did it as realistic as they could with him bursting out of his clothes and everything.
Yeah. And then Griffin Dunn, who plays Jack in the movie, at that point was just a New York stage actor and had never really done a film before. And he actually says on the commentary, both him and David Naughton kept saying to themselves, we really didn't audition for this movie. He just kind of talked to us, you know what I'm saying? We just sat there, talked about the script, et cetera, and then we just chilled for a little bit. And then the next thing you know, I get a phone call, hey, you got it. Okay.
Hey, look, director knows what he wants when he's been doing it long enough. And the other thing, like we've talked about 100 times, it's as important, if not maybe more important, that you get along with the people you're going to work with. Because there's lots of talented people out there, but there's also lots of assholes.
Yeah.
And you don't want to spend 6 months with an asshole if you can spend 6 months with someone you like.
Yeah, so David Naughton did not know Griffin Dunn before they made this movie, so this is a quote from Griffin Dunn. We were thrown together very quickly. As it turns out, when we finally met in London, we actually discovered we had a lot in common. We had both grown up in the same part of the world, in Connecticut, and just so happened that we hit it off, and we became fast friends. And I hope that's the case when you work on a project, you know, that you're like the other actors and you're able to have that kind of chemistry. It also helps that, you know, being the only two Americans in the actual cast itself, you know, we were kind of in it together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was kind of like we were talking about Skyfall, how you had Benicio del Toro and Daniel Craig bonding over rugby, right? When there's something that only two of you got, it's going to make for fast friends, especially in a situation where you're stuck overseas.
Yeah, well, one thing that Griffin Dunn does say is in terms of the audition, one thing that John Landis kept asking Griffin Dunn over and over and over again, are you claustrophobic? And Griffin Dunn thought about it. He was like, I never really thought about it. He was like, no, that was his honest answer because he didn't know. And the reason he kept asking him that because, in fact, he knew that character is going to be in a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, you know, you got all the stuff in your face. You know, are you claustrophobic? Because you're going to be in this stuff for hours on end, and we want you freaking out. You know what I'm saying? So,
Well, in fact, if I remember right, I was reading this thing a while back. Jim Carrey actually had some like retired CIA guys teaching him how to deal with torture because of the makeup for the Grinch.
Yeah.
Because he'd have to sit there for 10, 12 hours getting all the makeup done, and then he'd have to stay in it for another 8 just so they could get a shooting day done or something close to it. And it was just, it's murderous.
same thing we were talking about, since we talked about RoboCop just a little bit earlier. Peter
Yeah.
Weller said
Yeah.
the same thing. He said the first day, it took him about 11 hours just to get into the suit for the first time.
Yeah, it takes
About 10, 11 hours.
Well, and that's why it's kind of funny when you watch like something even like Eastern Promises. After a while, those guys are like, "Don't even take the tattoos off of me. Just leave this shit on.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Touch it up tomorrow. I'm not gonna shower."
yeah. Yeah, so both of them going into the makeup process. So first thing they did was Rick Baker made live casts of both actors. And
That takes a while.
Yeah, and then when David Naughton first met Rick Baker, he said, "Oh, you, who are you?" I'm playing David. I'm the werewolf." And he said, the first thing he said to him was like, "I feel so sorry for you," because he knew what he was about to put David through in terms of makeup. And Griffin Dunn talks about the makeup process. It's like he loved Rick Baker because he made the 6 hours bearable. The makeup was on, and then it constricts, and then it pulls on your skin, and then it has to be loosened up. You have people fussing with you. You almost pass out from the fumes. The glue was like almost airplane glue. It wasn't comfortable. And you had to come out in different... They came in with different techniques since then, but that was very early pioneer stuff that they did in this movie. And the opening scene, which sees David and Jack walking along the Yorkshire Road or wherever by themselves in the middle of the country, where they talk about, you know, having sex with this one girl. Like, is Debbie Klein gonna be in Rome? Like, there's nothing mediocre about Debbie Klein's body. She's a jerk. You're talking about a woman I love. I'm talking about a girl you want to fuck. So get over it, okay? Yeah. It is like I have to make love to her. It's very simple. She has no choice. But
So ridiculous. 1980s.
But at one point they start laughing and they start to lose it or whatever. And Griffin is the one that starts. He starts laughing, and they're so cold that actually some snot starts coming out his nose, and they just start completely losing it. And they do the take over again a couple times, but the take where they really screwed up, that's what's in the movie.
Well, it's because it's authentic.
Yeah, that's a friend right there.
Yeah, well, and see, that's the thing too. That's great. I mean, we got directors that'll let a scene play out.
Yeah,
Because you never know what kind of authenticity might come bleeding through that wasn't in your script, but just takes it to another level.
yeah, exactly. Now, in terms of the makeup, Griffin Dunn said his biggest fear is that his mom, who was ill at the time, would see him in this horrific makeup that he was in, and she would be she was ill, and she wouldn't be able to see her child basically as a corpse. His mom did see it. She wasn't super sick, but she was deeply disturbed by the sight of it. You know what I'm saying? Seeing her baby as a corpse.
Yeah.
It's very realistic makeup too.
No, they do. Again, there's a reason he won the Academy Award.
Yes, exactly. It's very detailed. Now, in the scene where Jack actually gets killed by the original werewolf in the movie or whatever, Rick Baker actually told Griffin Dunn specifically, because like it's a werewolf. Basically, it's Rick Baker with a werewolf head just punching at Griffin Dunn or whatever. He told him specifically, be careful with the wolf's head because it's new and it's delicate. Well, during the first take, Griffin Dunn basically ripped the whole damn face off of the thing, and Rick was so pissed off that he basically, the scene that you see in the movie where he's like, getting bludgeoned by this werewolf head, that's Rick Baker just beating the shit out of Griffin Dunn for being so. Rick was actually taking out his anger on Griffin Dunn, like, so Griffin Dunn screaming and all that shit. A lot of that was real.
Authenticity.
Yeah, and he actually, the whole screaming and Jack screaming, Jesus fuck, oh my God, hell. That was the thing from Landis. Like, I want this to be as real as possible. You're fighting for your life. You're about to die. What would you say? So he just screamed. He just went for it. You know what I'm saying? And apparently the post-attack scene where David gets attacked and then they actually shoot the werewolf or whatever, it confused a lot of people because you see David on the ground. He's bloodied up. And he turns over to his side and you see this old man on the ground with bullet holes in him. And apparently that confused a lot of people because, most people are used to seeing, like, the werewolf transformation back.
Right. They didn't. They had a hard time understanding that the transformation was instantaneous.
Yeah. So they look over and they see this old man dead, and they're like, "Where'd the old man come from?" Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, you gotta teach the audience sometimes how to speak the language of the world you're working in.
Exactly. Do you have any other facts about the movie?
There's more, but probably the only one that's kind of fun would be every single song in the soundtrack has a word moon in it.
Yeah, Blue Moon. And I think they had like 3 or 4 different versions of Blue Moon.
I'm sure they had at least that. And if you give it some time here, before too long, someone's going to do a remix because they'll be like, "Hey, we should bring back American Werewolf in London."
But the original, the first version is like at the beginning, Blue Moon, it's like 50s kind of opera kind of version. And then there's another version that plays during the transformation, Sam Cooke, which is like my favorite version of it. And then it plays at the very end. It's almost like very peppy and upbeat. Ba 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 da 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 ding da dong blue moon at the very.
Now, I will say that probably the only other thing, too, because I was just double-checking my notes, John Landis specifically told them the reason that they had a lack of silver bullets to kill them was because they wanted the opportunity for a sequel, which they never actually had.
Well, not a direct one anyway, I'll put it like that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with my original statement. Sorry.
I actually agree with you on that. So. Also, Rick Baker himself was actually disappointed because of the fact that all the time he spent in terms of making the werewolf faces and all the different effects in terms of the stretching, what they called change-o heads and all that shit. Yeah. Now, when they spent all these months working out the mechanisms and shit, and then John Landis would just take just a couple seconds of the film and it would show like the face stretching out or whatever, and he would say cut, and he was like, "That's it? Yeah, that's it. That's all I needed. Aren't you gonna do more? Like, does it do anything else?" Well, no. Well, I got it. He's so
That's honestly, it's the most depressing part of anything when it comes to working with a makeup department or special effects department, because they'll spend all this time and energy for a couple of seconds of screen time. Yeah. I mean, even you think about like second unit footage, you get into something that's got explosions, like you do like Fast and the Furious 9 or whatever. Yeah. I'll guarantee you they probably have at a minimum like 2 hours worth of explosions and car chases and other footage that just didn't make the film because there's no space for it.
Right.
So it can be heartbreaking, especially when you put that much time into something that's as revolutionary as the whole changeover they had in this one.
And David Nahn himself said the most difficult scene of the whole movie in terms of the makeup was the hospital scene, the dream sequence. Yeah. Where he's like there's this one little dream sequence where he's running through the woods and he stops and you see this hospital bed and you see this David in it. He's looking at this whole scene. He sees the nurse Price come in. She's smiling at him. And all of a sudden, there's a quick scare where he's like got the teeth in and got the eyes, and he's like pale and all this stuff. And he said that was the most difficult one because of the contact lenses. Because they were glass. Well,
and they're still not much better than that. I was watching behind the scenes for that movie Quarantine we were talking about a while ago. They actually have to have contact lens technicians for those big contacts like that cover the entire eyeball. It looks like about the most miserable thing ever. I mean, I wear regular contacts all the time, but My God, man, those glass ones are just murderous.
Yeah, and since we're talking about the songs with Moon in it, one of the songs that he really wanted, John Landis really wanted for this movie, was Cat Stevens' version of Moon Shadow. But Cat Stevens apparently really believed in the werewolves and the undead, and thought
He doesn't want his work too close to that.
Yeah, he didn't want to, put that kind of stuff into his movie, so he objected to it. And John Landis loved the song. He said it's a wonderful song about dismemberment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could always have the counterpoint for the comedy side go with "Fly Me to the Moon."
Yeah, and another one that he wanted was Elvis Presley's version of Blue Moon.
Oh yeah, that actually been pretty good.
But he couldn't get past Colonel Tom Parker.
It's a little bit difficult to do.
Yeah, apparently he was a complete charlatan, and the more and more Landis was trying to do negotiations with this guy, the more and more he realized he's not going to give me this song. He's just fucking with me right now.
Well, there's a reason that the Colonel had the money he did.
Oh yeah, he was a fugitive, right?
Something.
Yeah,
I don't remember. I'd have to look that up. I'm not as up on my Elvis trivia. I just remember he was definitely not what we would refer to as a straight shooter.
No, he was I don't know. I think he's like a fugitive, like an illegal alien or something.
Something. He had a bunch of legal issues going on aside from ripping off artists.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the actual makeup itself, with Griffin Dunn specifically, because of the fact that Jack, the character of Jack, pops in throughout the movie in different stages of decomposition. And Landis told him, "I want you to be as happy and chipper and as optimistic as possible. It's almost like this, whatever this is not happening to you.
Yeah,
you're just happy as hell. You know what I'm saying? This is my boy. I missed him. You know what I'm saying? And you see throughout the whole movie, Jack is just there's some somber moments with Jack, but for the most part, Jack is super happy. Hey, what's happening, man? How you doing? The hospital scene where he's just sitting there, can I get some of your toast, man? I like the hospital scene because it's two homeboys trying to have a conversation. Aren't you supposed to be buried somewhere in New York? Yeah. A bunch of folks came to my funeral. I was surprised how many people came. He was like, "Wow, you were a very well-liked person." Debbie Klein cried a lot. So she's so grief-stricken by my death, she runs and finds solace in Mark Levine's bed. And they're like, "Mark Levine? Yeah, an asshole." I swear, life mocks you even in death, man. He's talking about the girl he wanted to have sex with, sleeping with some other guy that he don't like. You know what I'm saying? Which is, unfortunately, is actually happening to me. So, I feel his pain.
Well, I was gonna say realism,
man. And then he gets into the whole explanation of what's happening to him. We were attacked by a werewolf on the moors. We were attacked by a lycanthrope, a werewolf. I was murdered in an unnatural death. And he set up the rules of the movie. And now I have to walk the earth in limbo until the werewolf's curse is lifted. The wolf's bloodline must be severed. The last remaining werewolf must be destroyed. And it's you, David. What? Please believe me. You'll kill people. Look, the supernatural, the power of darkness, it's all true. The undead surround me. This is my favorite line. You ever tried talking to a corpse? It's boring. I'm lonely, man. Take your life. Kill yourself before you kill others. I just love that line. You ever talk to a corpse? It's boring. Yeah. So I love that line, man. He's so happy too.
He's
until that one moment.
He's a bubbly guy.
Well, he was, yeah. Now, for David Nunn, right before the big transformation scene at the end, there's a segment where he's in a phone booth trying to call his family, home, almost kind of saying goodbye before I kill myself, kind of thing.
Right.
And he refers to his sister and brother as Max and Rachel,
which is
the names of his children. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Well, that's one of those kind of fun things that when you are in the director's seat, you get to put in stuff for your family and for you.
Exactly. So it's really nice. And Deborah Newman also, again, was the costume designer on this movie. So the whole little puffy shirt jackets that they had were designed by her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, initially, this movie was almost going to get a X rating because of the fact
because of the porn.
Yeah. Because porn and the violence. They had to tone it down for R rating.
Right. Well, and that's the weird thing. Again, we could do one just on the MPAA because that's a black box and a half.
That's right. Yeah. So what he had to do is he had to tone down. There was the sex scene, of course, with him and Alex, the nurse character. They had to tone that down. And also there's one spot that they never filmed where there's supposed to be a piece of toast that Jack eats during the hospital scene, and a piece of toast is supposed to fall out of his severed neck and shit.
Yeah.
But the one thing that they did keep, and they didn't really notice it until later, was the one flapping little thing of
Yeah,
flesh.
yeah. The little bit of flesh on his
when
neck.
Griffin Dunn is talking, he keeps flipping and everybody's like, "Oh my god, it's so gross." That's the one thing that everybody kept noticing in that scene. It's a good scene.
But what's ridiculous
yeah.
is you fast forward about 30 years,
Yeah.
and you've got Harvey Dent, where you can see all of his ligaments, and he's taking a shot of whiskey, and it's spilling down his throat and everything.
Yeah.
And just because he's technically not dead,
True.
they're gonna let that stuff slide. Because I mean, again, we could go forever about how the hell Nolan avoided an R rating, and it's probably just because they didn't have the blood splatter with all the death.
True.
Because otherwise, holy shit, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about relaxing in standards.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the music for the movie, aside from the pop songs that we mentioned earlier, a lot of them with the word moon in them, the actual orchestral score of this movie was done by Landis' favorite, Elmer Bernstein. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is, only about 7 minutes of his real score was actually in the movie.
Well, yeah, and that was a very good choice and an intentional choice, because if you bring in too much orchestral or too much scoring, in my opinion, especially something like this where you're striving for so much reality,
Yeah.
it's rough. It has more the opposite effect, where rather than extending the suspension of disbelief, it actually hampers it. Whereas instead, you end up with all these pop songs, and it starts to feel more like, and a lot of times it's source music, right?
Yeah.
It's like the radio, it's the TV, it's the background, and so it keeps you more in a sense of, this is real.
Yeah. And actually, Elmer Bernstein actually wrote a piece for the transformation. And it's a very long piece. And actually, you can hear it on YouTube, the full piece that's supposed to be in there. And it sounds cool. It's good horror movie music, but I think what they did was much better.
No, they made the right decision.
Yeah. Now, this is actually one of 2 werewolf movies where Rick Baker won the Academy Award for Best Makeup. It was this movie and the most recent one, The Wolfman in 2010, the remake with Benicio del Toro.
Yep.
Yeah, so good for him.
Which, I mean, it wasn't bad. The Universal's been having some trouble overall restarting their classic movie franchises.
Yeah.
They did okay with The Mummy, but I honestly think they probably would have gotten more mileage out of it if they'd have gone with someone lesser known than Tom Cruise.
Yeah, my thing with the Wolfman, the Benicio del Toro one, I like the movie for the most part, mainly because I like the werewolf parts. The werewolf parts are fantastic, and also I do like certain parts. Like there's one scene where Benicio del Toro is like an asylum. He's like in an asylum or whatever. They bring him in as sort of like a demonstration of like phobias or whatever, and then he's like warning them, "I will kill all of you. I'll kill all of you." And then they're like, he's bullshitting or whatever. And the doctor's like trying to explain to them like the intricacies of his condition, and then as he's explaining this shit, he actually starts to change into a werewolf. And all the other people in the it's like an auditorium. All the people are like looking at doctor. He's whatever. He's still talking, but everybody's watching. The fangs are growing, the hair is growing, the blood is coming everywhere, and everyone's like, "Dude, turn around now!" And he turns around and he finally sees like, "Oh." Like he wasn't kidding. No, I wasn't kidding. And it's a real good thing. And then he eventually escapes and goes out into London. And there's actually one very similar scene to an American Werewolf in that sequence, where he the werewolf is on a rampage in like the middle of this town, and then there's like this bus, the double-decker bus.
Yep.
And he actually attacks the double-decker bus. Same thing in American Werewolf. And John Landis actually pointed that out in the commentary today. They took my scene, man. Like, they actually did. Yeah. So.
Well, I had again, this is one of those great things that Tom Mankiewicz always told us. He said, if you're a writer and you copy something that somebody else did, you're a plagiarist. But if you're a director and you copy something someone else did, it's an homage. Mm-hmm. So it was an homage to American Werewolf in London.
So Joe Johnston, who was the director of that movie, homage John Landis. Very literally homage John Landis.
And if I remember right, I heard something like, I think it was Tarantino said that good directors borrow, great directors steal.
Yeah, I remember you said that. Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to be influenced, and it's such a visual art form.
Yeah.
It's almost like complaining that if you're an impressionist, that if you're Pizarro and you're saying, "Hey, Monet stole my shit," it's like, no, you guys are still working in the same medium.
Also, my favorite actual line in the movie is actually Anthony Hopkins. It's like he discovers Benicio after he's transformed into a werewolf and killed all these people. And he looks at him and says, "Terrible things, Lawrence. You've done terrible things." I just love the delivery of that line.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Now, going back to the actual movie itself, Mr. Frank Oz,
Yep.
another staple of Mr. John Landis, is in the movie. He's the dude from the American Embassy trying to explain, what's going on in terms of the funeral arrangements.
Yep.
And of course, this is the first time where David discovers that his friend is dead, and of course he freaks the fuck out. And then Frank Oz is actually mad at him for freaking out. Like, my friend is dead. Yeah, I'm in a hospital. Yeah, I'm kind of unstable right now. He's like, Mr. Kessler, calm down. There's no room for a stay. And you hear that Yoda voice, Mr. Kessler, calm down. You know, like, I've already talked to your parents, and they're gonna be.
He's got one of the most unique voices.
Yeah, and then at the end he's leaving. He's like, "You dumbass kids don't appreciate anything you do for them." Like, dude, his friend just died. He was attacked. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, yeah,
but he's a dumbass kid.
Yeah, what the fuck? And then actually, they slip in a kind of under the radar cameo of Frank Oz too, because at one point when they're doing like a nightmare sequence, it's like David and with his family, and they're watching. And it's like kids, and then like his parents, and the little kids are sitting there watching the Muppet Show. Frank Oz is Miss Piggy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, another 2 cameos in the same movie, and I love that shit. And then actually, one thing that both David Nunn and Griffin Dunn wondered in terms of the music for the movie. One song that they couldn't figure out why he didn't get was Warren Zevon, Werewolves of London.
Yeah.
Oh, Werewolves of London. Dun, 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 dun. I think it would have been good with them.
It could have worked.
Yeah. Oh. I love that song.
There's actually I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. I'll find it, but there's a movie There's a song right now that samples that really heavy. It's actually one of my more favorite ones right now.
The more famous one that samples it is the Kid Rock.
Well, this wasn't Kid Rock.
Swing home Alabama, awesome. No, that one.
Yeah. No, there's another one that samples specifically the "Aou" part with the werewolf. It's really great. Yeah.
All right. So in the final transformation scene in the movie theater, when the werewolf busts out of the theater, and of course the cop comes in and is like, "What the hell's going on here? Some sort of animal, sir." The werewolf breaks out and he bites his head off. That's Rick Baker with the werewolf head. And you can and there's a picture that shows Rick Baker just right off a screen. You can see like with the full beard and everything, and chops the dude's head off. And then starts the whole crazy Piccadilly Circus thing. To date, as of 2020, this is still the only John Landis movie to ever win an Academy Award, which we mentioned earlier. The werewolf howl itself was actually a combination of a bunch of different animals, but they said specifically it was like a mix between a wolf and an elephant, because it's a very unique howl. Like, oh, like it was.
Well, it's loud and it's heavy and it's deep.
Yeah.
You don't typically get that. I mean, most wolves, like if anybody's been hunting or whatever, if you've heard a wolf or you heard a coyote, it's definitely probably closer to like an alto if we're gonna go like musically speaking.
Yeah. And
they're definitely more close to a baritone in this movie.
And then the actual the werewolf sound itself, when he's like attacking somebody, like swiping at them, it kind of sounds like a cougar or like some kind of big cat.
Big cat, yeah.
Like, wow, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, look, when it comes to the sound and the audio sweetening, you just use whatever works.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be legit. And again, you're working with what is completely a fictional creature. So who's to say you're wrong?
Yeah, and also one person we haven't really talked to who was kind of like a big fixture in this movie, one of the main fixtures of this movie, Jenny Agutter as Nurse Alex.
Yeah.
And she's, the main love interest in the movie. She falls in love. She does the Florence Nightingale thing, falls in love with the David Nunn character while he's in the hospital. Now, apparently, Jenny had known John and Deborah Landis, when she first came to L.A. and was like getting roles, whatever. I think the biggest role she had prior to this movie was she was in Logan's Run.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's the chick in Logan's Run.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's her and Michael York. Yeah. So,
okay.
And she knew the Landises for years, and they knew she was a wonderful British actress. And like, you know what? I know a great British actress. We need a British crew. Jenny. So they got Jenny Agutter. And of course, David Nunn says specifically he had a big crush on Jenny Agutter because of the fact he had known of her and thought she was beautiful, obviously. Yeah. And he was, he's like, oh man, so it's so great when we doing the love scenes and shit like that. It was not reciprocated, but but she went on to do a lot of great things. I've seen her in a bunch of different movies. Like she was in Darkman.
Okay.
The nurse is like, I think she's like a doctor or nurse that's like explaining the Darkman's condition about him, not feeling pain and shit and being all messed up. She's the one that explains that shit. And also, the most recent thing I saw her in, she's in the MCU too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the Avengers movies, there's like this council that like Nick Fury reports
Yeah.
One of them is the very scene very clearly. One of them is Powers Booth.
Yeah.
The other one is Jenny Agutter.
I didn't realize that.
You can see that very clearly. And then,
I've got to go back and watch Logan's Run again because, like I said, I didn't remember her in Logan's Run.
Yeah, and then also, she's in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. There's actually a great action scene where it's Jenny Agutter in person, like at Shield headquarters, where we're talking with Robert Redford and a couple other characters, and then all of a sudden her character just starts kicking ass, and it was like, of course it's close up shots of Jenny, but it's like somebody else doing the action, and then you see that the whole thing was actually Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow in disguise the entire time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but you see her face at first, that Jenny Agutter.
And then they do the full Mission Impossible.
Basically, that's exactly what they did. So, but that's the last thing I saw on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and at one point, Alex is actually sitting there reading Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, which is actually John Landis' favorite book. And at one point, he was actually trying to make that actual book into a movie.
Really?
Yeah. So he would try for years to make that into a movie. And for the actual Piccadilly Circus thing, when they're in the porno and they're talking to each other, the Griffin Dunn that you see in there, the Jack character, is a puppet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a full-on puppet because Rick Baker's saying himself, like when they're in the theater and they're talking and shit, which actually is still one of my favorite scenes in that movie, and the mouth is actually being operated by Griffin Dunn.
All right.
So they gave him something to do, but he's like, this guy's decomposing. I can't just subtract from his face. We got to do something. So what he did is took the life cast and basically molded what Griffin Dunn's skeleton looks like, put some prosthetics around it, and put some clothes on him, and that's basically it. Yeah. So
it makes sense.
It was a puppet. And he's sitting there watching the porno theater together. He's like scratching his nose and shit. And then sitting there, he's like, I love when David looks at him the first time. He's like, man, you look awful. He's like, thank you. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry.
Still waiting for you to kill yourself. Come on.
No. He's like, I'm just gonna say I told you so. If I was still alive, I probably would. But I did tell you so, you schmuck. And then he introduces him to all the people that he killed the night before, who are now all undead. And that's a very eerie scene because he's seen all these people like scarred up and viciously mauled because of all the shit he did to him.
Yep.
And the one guy, the guy he kills in the subway station or whatever, like he's the most severe one of the group. He's like, yes, I do look most unpleasant. Now, why are you doing this to me? Mr. Goodman is your good friend, whereas I am merely a victim of your carnivorous lunar activities. And he's looking at him like, look, man, I'm sorry. I don't remember none of that. I don't know what to say to you. You left my wife a widow, my children fatherless. And now I'm told I'm supposed to walk the earth in limbo, one of the living dead, until the werewolf's curse is lifted and the bloodline severed. And as the bloody finger points at him, you must die, David Kessler. And then the first people he killed is like this happy couple, and they're like super happy, all blooded up and shit. Like, hello. And 3 homeless dudes or whatever. And then of course everybody's like trying to convince him to kill himself.
Yeah.
Like, how will I do it? Suicide. Yes, you must take your own life. It's easy for you to say you're already dead. No, Harry and everybody else here are all undead. Not dead, they're undead. So how should I do it? Sleeping pills. Not sure enough. I can hang myself. No. If you do it wrong, it can be painful. You could choke to death. And they're like, so what? Let him choke. Do you mind? The man is a friend of mine. Well, he ain't no friend of me. They're like, gentlemen, please. And like, a knife. Or a gun. I know where you get a gun. Don't need like a silver bullet or something. Or be serious, man. Like, yeah, a gun would be good. Yeah, just put a gun in your forehead and pull the trigger. Or if you put it in your mouth, you'd be sure not to miss. And he's like, thank you all. You're all very helpful. And they just come up with these all fucked up ways for him to kill himself. Electric shock, a car crash. You could throw yourself in front of a tube. Drowning. Try to be helpful.
Tube, just go grab the third rail. You'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now we talked a lot about the intricacies of the movie itself. Let's talk about the most famous scene of the movie, the transformation, the Oscar-winning transformation, pretty much the game-changing.
Well, look,
transformation.
You've just got done listing a lot of amazing things that Rick Baker had to do to make the movie what it was.
Yes.
And again, without the puppetry, without the wolf head that's biting the cop's head off and everything, it wouldn't have got all the way across the line. But there's no doubt that the transformation is what started everything as far as anyone paying attention going,
oh my God,
this is the guy.
It blew everybody's mind, man.
Because if you again, like you talked about before, you're a big werewolf fan.
Yeah.
Go back and watch any of the werewolf movies prior to this. Mm-hmm. The transformation, at most you get an arm, you get a leg, you get a close-up of a shoulder bursting through, some clothes or something.
And of course, the classic lap dissolve Wolfman. He's sitting there and like one thing of makeup, another stage of makeup.
Yeah, exactly. You've never seen a transformation like this in film until Rick Baker.
Yeah, and it's actually set off a whole cycle of werewolf movies. It brought the werewolf back, like
sure.
Like movies that came out after this, Wolven, which is not a werewolf movie. It's like it's weird,
kind of.
It's not a
close enough.
It's not a werewolf movie. The Howling, of course, Teen Wolf, The Howling 2, Your Sister's a Werewolf, Full Moon High.
I just like the subtitle.
Yeah, Teen Wolf 2, The Company of Wolves, and Howling 3. All these came in like pretty much after this movie. Now, the transformation itself, Rick Baker actually went at it from a scientific viewpoint, and what he did was he didn't have a wolf skeleton, so he had a dog skeleton. So what he did is he took a human skeleton and a dog skeleton and kind of went over notes. He noticed, similar bones and similar things or whatever. And he went at it, what would it take for this human skeleton to transform into this dog-like skeleton? And though the proportions were different, he noticed there were similar bones, and he basically just made it to suit that.
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly figuring out how to maintain pretty close to the same proportions, but to exaggerate where the differences were to show the change, especially like with the skull, like we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Making that change where you have the muzzle, the mouth, the nose, and everything extend out and elongate.
Now, the vast majority of the actual transformation itself was done with pneumatic tubing and different things that he would call change-o heads that were basically like a polyurethane-ish type of material that could be stretched and moved. But after a while, it would continue to elasticize and like almost become like putty. And they, like I said, they use a lot of tubing, especially like with the transforming the chest and transforming the back and the spine and all that stuff.
I would say the back and the spine transformation is probably, it's at least as important and visually disturbing as the face, if not more so.
Yeah.
For me personally, I remember when I watched, because you get to see each individual vertebrae basically pop up and get bigger as his shoulders hunch and he changes into that quadruped from the bipedal situation that he was in before. That right then and there it's absolutely terrifying to watch.
But the initial part that kind of gets everybody, the hand.
Yeah, the hand is a rough
puts the hand up, and the same thing. The hand starts to stretch and elongate, and same thing. They just had
and then
tubing.
the thumb breaks and comes over.
Yeah, and then they had the tubing and stuff. So basically, it just turns from a hand to this paw, and it elongates, and like that's the whole kicker of the transformation. Now, in terms of how they filmed it, they started him in like the hairiest stage initially, and they went backwards.
Yeah.
So they basically just remove more hair, and then the whole thing where he flips over on his back, he's basically in the ground. It's like an elevated stage. They put him in the ground, and they basically had people like manipulating the legs and all this other stuff with sticks and tubes and shit. And he's just like stretching and they, convulsing and he's like shaking and all this other shit. And it just looks so great, man. It really does.
It's fantastic.
Oh my God, yeah. And then he flips over and of course, he does the final little stage of the transformation where they push out the little plunger in the face and then the eyes change and then the teeth come in and the head starts to shake. And actually, John Landis himself was very enamored with the wolf. He actually feels he showed the werewolf too much. Because he's just enamored with the look of the whole.
But this is one of those things we come back to whenever we talk about directors that are masters of their craft. They never, ever, ever are happy with a movie, no matter how. I mean, I was reading a book a little bit ago talking about what's his old boy with Crash. He was talking about when he premiered it at Toronto. All he did was he was sitting there the whole time it was playing, and he said, I walked out of there, or when the lights came up rather, he had about 80 notes of all the things were wrong with it. He has to fix this movie tonight,
right.
And instead it's a standing ovation.
Yeah.
These guys are never happy when you talk to him now. He's going to say, there's shit that I want to change.
That's the same thing that happened with this transformation. Like he was initially, like Rick Baker was saying, they would go to like theaters or whatever, like in Westwood, and the whole crew would go. They'd be in the back of the theater, and the transformation would happen, and people started clapping and like, oh my God, that's fantastic. And then like All right, we did something here.
Well, part of it too, when it comes to being the special effects guy or anybody on a film, they always talk about seeing beyond the frame, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons why most directors, after they finish shooting, and it's not quite the same anymore because your editor, since everything's digital, they're cutting as you go now. Most directors will try to take at least a month of vacation if they can, get away from it, so they have time to forget.
Yeah.
So they're not seeing beyond the frame. Because if you've ever been on set, or you worked around a film, you worked in a movie, you know what the audience sees is that square, that rectangle up there, right? Depending if it's a movie, TV, 3, 4, 16, 9, 2, 3, 5, whatever it is. You're going to sit there and you're going to go, okay, so this looks great, but part of what can influence you is that you remember that just off frame to the right, there was that PA that was a pain in the ass that day, or you remember that just off frame to the left, it's like, man, there's that other wolf head that would have looked so much better, but the stick plastic broke, or whatever it is. There's always those little bits that come in. So, again, it's that endless pursuit of perfection that's frustrating that also makes these guys what they are.
And also, in terms of the actual making of the movie itself, the script, from script to screen, number one, the movie was actually filmed in sequence, and also,
Which is crazy because that never happens.
yeah, exactly. And also, in terms of the script itself, the only thing that really changed from original script to the movie is the theater, the porno theater.
Yep.
Because like when he initially wrote it, it was a cartoon theater,
Yep.
and the only thing that changed was, so instead of a porno going on, it was actually a Roadrunner cartoon. That's what it's supposed to be. So this whole thing, the transformation is happening, and it's supposed to be a Roadrunner too on the screen.
Yeah, but that's expensive.
Yes,
It's
it
a
is.
lot cheaper to go and shoot your own porn.
Plus, at the same time, realistically, the cartoon theaters that he had that were in London when he initially wrote it were turned into porno theaters, so it's more realistic.
Well, I mean, that's part of having to wait, 10 years to make your movie. You have to make adjustments.
And also, John Landis' most visible cameo in all his movies is in this movie. During the Piccadilly Circus rampage of the werewolf, you see a bunch of people getting hit by cars and flipping over and bodies going everywhere. There's one where a car runs into a bank. You see a guy get hit, and then he goes through the actual door, the bank window. That's John Landis. He took a stunt for this movie.
Do it.
And you see him very clearly. Get the glasses and the beard and all this. Like, boom! He took a stunt. And yeah, that's pretty much his biggest cameo. Now, in terms of the release of the movie itself, An American Werewolf was actually released in August 21st, 1981. It grossed $30 million at the box office in the U.S., and it also grossed $62 million worldwide against a budget of $5.8 million.
An unqualified success any way you look at it.
Oh, my God. So, American Werewolf is appreciated as a milestone in the comedy horror genre, and because of its innovative makeup effects.
Well, unless I'm mistaken, I mean, that preceded Evil Dead.
Yes, it did. Actually, it inspired movies like that. Beetlejuice, Gremlins, Evil Dead, where they used extreme horror and
comedy.
Comedy. Very funny comedy.
Which by the time, like we mentioned earlier, you get to something like Zombieland.
Yeah. Oh, also, Edgar Wright actually says, in terms of his movie Shaun of the Dead, American Werewolf was the primary inspiration for
Which
that movie.
we could do one on that. I love that film.
Me too.
Did you ever watch the behind the scenes as far as how they pitched that?
No.
Dude, we'll have to watch that one time. They actually went in and pitched to, was it the BBC? Whoever it was they got funding from. They pitched it using a big flip chart. It's pretty crazy. They had the whole thing storyboarded out. So if I remember right, Edgar Wright and I'm blanking on the actor's name. They stood there together and they pitched it.
Simon Pegg?
Simon Pegg, yeah. They tag teamed it.
Okay.
So they actually redid it for the special features on that one to show you this is how we got the thing made.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
Now, we talked about An American Werewolf and the popularity that it inspired, but it also inspired another beloved project that I feel personally is the real successor to An American Werewolf in London.
100%. And this was our honorable mention that we talked about in the last episode we were going to get to today.
Exactly. Michael Jackson's Thriller video. My favorite music video ever.
I think it's everyone's favorite music video.
Basically, yeah, it's the Halloween staple. It's the one like song or music video that you have to see every Halloween.
Now, before we get too deep into it, I don't know if you know how to do the dance. Do you remember how to do the dance?
I've done the video. I've done the dance.
I've done it too.
Yeah, I've done it on video.
When I was in a drama team back when I was in high school, we had something we did that was we used the Thriller dance. It was great.
I learned it initially just because
Yeah.
I wanted to learn it. And
Well, that's why we put it in. We just wanted to do it.
And actually, if you go on YouTube and look up a video called Jadrell Belser, Doc of the Dead, JADARRELBELSER, Doc DOC of the Dead, you will see me in Iraq when I was still in the military performing the Thriller dance for the Marines for my unit for our Halloween show. And I did that because of the fact we had a costume. It was like an impromptu costume contest, something for morale.
I was going to say, you got to keep the morale up, man. You're a doc.
Marine morale. So we kicked it up. I kicked it up, and I was like, you know what, I can do this. And then I happened to have the song on my iPod, so we played it, and I did the dance for the Marines. And you can see it on film. It's it's a fun.
Dude, you were ripped too.
Yes, I was.
I was looking. I was like, going, damn.
I was in Iraq. I had nothing else to do but work out.
I mean, it helps.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's go ahead and get into Thriller. Now,
all right.
The actual album Thriller was actually released in '82, and it spent more than a year at number one of the Billboard 200. And it's already at this point it was already the highest grossing album of all time, the biggest selling album of all time. It was already that. But mid '83, sales began to decline. Now, Michael, who was, of course, obsessed with sales figures, he actually went to Walter Yetnikoff, who was the head of, CBS, Epic Records or whatever, and he wanted to more or less do something to put the album back at the top of the charts. So his manager, Michael's manager, Frank DeLeo, who is in Goodfellas, is right. He's Tootie. He's Paulie's brother in Goodfellas, and he's also in Wayne's World. Frankie Sharp of Sharp Records. Same guy,
That's right.
Frank DeLeo. Yeah. So he was Michael Jackson's manager at the time, and he suggested making a third music video based on the track Thriller. And he basically just told Michael this: it's simple. All you got to do is dance, sing, and make it scary.
Yep.
That's what he told him. Now, Michael himself has seen An American Werewolf in London, and he really, really liked it. He actually, if you watch the Making of Thriller documentary on YouTube, he says, like, I watched An American Werewolf in London. We really, really liked it because it was comedy and horror. I thought I really liked it. And it's like, so who did that? And it's like, John Landis. So, like, okay, so that's how we got to get for this. And then John actually talks about, like, he was actually, at the time, he's actually on vacation in London with his wife, Deborah, doing nothing. And he gets a call from Michael Jackson, but Michael didn't know the difference in terms of time difference between L.A. and London, so he called John Landis at 2 in the morning in London. And then he calls him and was like, so, do you know, hello, this is Michael Jackson. Like, do you know my song Thriller? And he's like, yes, of course. He puts his hand on the phone and says, what song Thriller? He said he knew the album and he knew Beat It and Billie Jean. And he liked both videos, particularly Beat It because of the fact he reminded him of West Side Story.
Yeah.
But he just thought, you know what? I don't want to do like a music video. You know what I'm saying? If we want to do something like this, I think it should be a little more elaborate. You know what I'm saying? I think it should be bigger, better, the best, you know what I'm saying? And actually, he actually had a side motivation in terms of Thriller. He actually wanted to bring back the two-reeler.
Oh, okay.
The two-reeler shorts, you know what I'm saying? For those of you who
Look,
are not aware...
a lot of filmmakers
Yeah.
really want to, and it's a good reason.
Yeah, for a lot of people who don't realize what two-reelers are, Three Stooges shorts.
Yeah.
Those are two-reelers. You know what I'm saying? Old, like, comedy shorts.
We could go into a whole long dissertation if we wanted to about short films in general. I mean, there's a reason why if you go to film school now, they don't have you go out and make a feature film. Aside from the fact that it would cost a bunch of money, short films are really where you learn how to craft a story, how to tell something that can engage people. And it's also where you start to learn things about sequencing and the sequence approach. The best movies, there's actually a really great book by Paul Galino called The Sequence Approach. Any aspiring screenwriters out there? He explains that the 3-act sequence, it's important, but what actually makes a great film is within that 3-act sequence, you're going to have anywhere between a minimum of 6 to maybe as many as 8 shorter sequences that all have their own climax and resolution that kind of build on that sort of thing. So anyone who comes from film, anyone who's got that film background, that filmmaking background, that's where you start to work. That's where you get to work stuff out. Nowadays, you probably do it more in commercials. That's why you have like David Fincher going out and making tons of commercials with his production company in between his features. It helps you get sharp, helps you learn the new technologies that are coming out. So it makes total sense he'd be pushing a two-reeler.
Exactly. So John initially gave Michael a list of horror movies to watch in terms of inspiration for the script, but Michael, being Michael, was so squeamish. He's like, "No, that's too scary. I don't know what's too scary." You're trying to do a scary thing, but you don't watch anything scary.
It's ignorant.
Yeah. It's ignorant, yeah. But he did love, like, the one thing he did love was American Werewolf, and he insisted that the personnel that made that movie be used for this video, and a lot of the personnel from that movie are in this video, particularly, of course, John Landis, makeup artist Rick Baker,
Absolutely.
the cinematographer Robert Paintner, the actual score, the musical score from Elmer Bernstein. There's a little bit of Elmer Bernstein's score in Thriller,
Well, yeah, the music when they're watching the movie at the beginning.
and of course, Deborah Nadoolman. She designed the costumes for Thriller.
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta bring his wife back into it.
Exactly.
She designed the famous red jacket.
Yeah, she did. Exactly, yeah. And the whole reason she did it with the red and the whole V thing, number one, she wanted to make him look bigger.
Yep.
And also, the red is basically to make him more virile.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more of a visceral color. Especially you look at it, it's like really cool to see.
Well, and it pops, especially with the rest of the background. And since he's, you know, Michael, he needs to be the focus of attention.
Yeah, and like John Landis himself saying about the two-wheeler thing, I saw a chance to resurrect a genre that had once been a Hollywood staple. Like, music videos were new in 1983, and MTV was only 2 years old.
Yep.
Yeah, and at that point, MTV basically basically maintained itself more or less on just rock videos by white artists. Michael was the first one to break through with Billie Jean.
Yep.
Yeah, and then after that, a lot of black artists came in there saying, you got Prince and Rick James and people doing videos on, showing videos on MTV and whatnot.
Well, like, I mean, I've had conversations with my dad about MTV and everything because, I mean, obviously, like most people, you know, that came up from our generation or before, they lament the loss of music videos on MTV. But he was saying, you know, when he first went off to college, you know, the big thing to do is you go to somebody's house and you go to a party and whoever had the, you know, a nice stereo, whatever, they have a record on or something in the corner, and then all of a sudden overnight it's swapped. And if you're going to someone's house for a party, quote unquote, air quotes, it's really just a bunch of people hanging out watching music videos on MTV for like 2 or 3 hours before everyone goes home to, you know, go study or go to bed or whatever.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the actual funding for this movie, now, Michael and John Landis conceived that the short would be shot on 35 millimeter film.
Which is why it stands up and looks gorgeous today, because a lot of that stuff was shot on RCA.
And it has the production value of a feature film. And initially, the budget was $900,000, which is actually much larger than most music videos, especially at that time.
At that time, because I was going to say, for a minute, the late 90s, early 2000s,
Oh, yeah.
that was a small budget, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Now, Landis, when he went to Walter Yetnikoff to propose doing this short film, Walter Yetnikoff swore to him so loud that John Landis had to remove the phone from his ear. So Michael's record label, Epic Records, had little interest in making another video for Thriller, believing that the album had already peaked. So Yetnikoff kind of relented, but he only agreed to give just like $100,000. So to help finance the project, the producer of Thriller, George Folsey Jr., and also he is also the producer of a lot of Landis' films, particularly American Werewolf. He suggested making the making of documentary, which combined with Thriller would basically produce an entire hour of basically a content that could be sold to television. Now, initially, television networks refused to finance the actual project itself, seeing that they thought Thriller, the album, was like last year's news. It was done. It's over. MTV, who, like I said, had found success with Billie Jean and Beat It, they also had a policy of not financing the videos themselves, instead of letting the record companies do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were a small cable startup.
Then, talk about a small cable startup, Showtime, which was new at the time. They agreed to pay for half the budget. And then when MTV saw that Showtime was getting, fuck this, so like they agreed to pay the rest, and basically they adjusted it, saying that we're paying for a motion picture as opposed to a music video. So
they said is that they're paying for the documentary.
So MTV paid $250,000 for the exclusive rights to show the documentary. Showtime paid $300,000 for the paid cable rights. Michael covered the additional costs, which he actually was reimbursed. And then the real kicker was a Vestron music video. They actually distributed the making of Thriller on VHS. And then basically what they had was like a sell-through.
Yeah.
Where they because apparently back in the day VHSs were like $90.
They were, well, I mean, right then, because you're going late 70s into early 80s, VHS was still a new technology. So, you and I would remember DVDs, right? DVD players first came out, DVDs came out. You were spending $25-$30 for a DVD.
Right.
You'd spend $200 for a player that would skip if you sneezed around it.
Yeah.
It was kind of the same thing, because it has to hit critical mass in the market before they can actually sell through at a rate that's reasonable to consumers.
Yeah, so... But yeah, basically, the actual thing itself, a lot of people would rent the making of Thriller, and it became like a super popular rental, and it made more money for the actual project itself because of the rental for the other video cassette, or buying it, you know what I'm saying, because it was cheaper than most of the other videos at the time. Now, one of the more famous things that really made Thriller appeal to people is the disclaimer at the beginning, because in fact, no video had a disclaimer before. It was it made it kind of mysterious and kind of like what are we about to show here? That kind of thing. Really, Michael at the time was a devout Jehovah's Witness, and the basically the order that he was a part of was really upset with the subject matter of Thriller, particularly the whole sequence of Michael Jackson turning into a monster. So to combat this, because of the fact they already started making the video, John Landis actually wrote the disclaimer at the beginning, and the disclaimer says, and I quote, "Due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this film in no way endorses a belief in the occult." And he just had Michael sign off on it. Yeah. So you see that little quote Michael Jackson or whatever, but it was written by John Landis.
One more quick note before we move on from the financing. So because they were having that trouble at the beginning, trying to figure out how to get $900K, Michael actually offered to pay the entire budget to get this thing made, but John Landis said there's no way, I'm not going to let you do it, because at the time Michael was still living with his parents in Encino behind a supermarket.
Gelson's.
Yeah, he for being the world's biggest superstar as far as music goes, he was still living a really tame life. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I believe the state is called Havenhurst. It's still there, but
I mean, it's not like Neverland or any of that other stuff he got to.
It was kind of like Neverland, like Neverland Junior almost, because he had some of the.
It was Joe's land.
But Michael bought most of it, and then
he bought it for Joe. Joe ran the shop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in terms of the actual transformation itself, which is integral for this video, it was again designed by Rick Baker, and Rick was initially unsure about working on Thriller because, in fact, he thought a lot of actors can handle doing the makeup and stuff, but he found that Michael Jackson was probably one of the best people he ever worked with because Michael was cool with it.
Well, he had years to practice with Joe.
Yeah. So, but
talk about mental trauma and abuse.
But he said the whole time, because he did the makeup thing and everything, he never heard Michael complain a single time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael was very cooperative, very sweet. He actually didn't think that this is Michael Jackson, because he's so shy and so quiet. But then what really woke him to who Michael Jackson was, because he knew of Michael from the Jackson 5 and shit like that. But then he saw the Motown 25 special where Michael did the moonwalk and all that for the first time, and he's like, "Oh, okay, so this is Michael Jackson." But then he's it's almost like two different people.
Yeah.
But he sees Michael dynamic on stage, commanding, just the star, and then he sees this shy little dude. It's wow, it's two different people almost. Yeah,
at least.
But one misnomer from the movie that a lot of people get confused is the transformation scene where everybody says Michael Jackson turns into a werewolf. He does not turn into a werewolf. He actually turns into a cat monster. Yeah, and actually they say it in the making of. They refer to it as a cat monster. And
it's got to be different.
And you see Rick Baker doing pretty much the early stages of the makeup using acetate and lap dissolves to show what the transformation would be like. And if you look at the finished product, it looked more like a panther than an actual werewolf and shit. And you can actually see in the video when he does the transformation, it grows whiskers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it grows really long whiskers. So yeah, it is a cat monster. It is not a werewolf. Now, speaking of that, the actual transformation itself, the whole reason, because the fact that Rick initially, of course, he's always a fan of bipedal monsters and shit. And he's like, you know what? We got to make it bipedal because it makes it easier for you to dance and all this other shit, that you got to do. And like, okay, we'll do that. We'll go that route. Now, the two films that you can very see clearly inspired the writing of Thriller. The initial sequence is inspired by I Was a Teenage Werewolf, starring another teen heartthrob named Michael Landon. So Michael was hot at the time. He was like, Bonanza, and then he's doing this werewolf movie and shit. So Michael Landon from 1950s. I Was a Teenage Werewolf, and then also the zombie thing was inspired obviously by Night of the Living Dead. So two favorites of John Landis, so he decided to put them together for this marriage of this crazy film. Now, in terms of Rick Baker himself, Rick Baker has a cameo in the video.
I don't remember that. Where was he?
When the zombies are coming out of the graveyard initially, there's one that comes out of a crypt. However, and he comes out, he's like his eyes are sunken back, and he's got like stuff coming out of his mouth. That's Rick Baker. Yeah, and then you see him actually in the making of taking that makeup off, explaining what the makeup process is like. So, but Rick Baker has a cameo in the video, and apparently, in terms of the design, Deborah Naduman actually noted that Michael actually had the exact same measurements as Fred Astaire, which is crazy when you think about it, because that's one of Michael's biggest idols. And the same growling noises that you hear for the cat monster in that particular video are the same effects that you hear in the American Werewolf.
If you've already got them, use them.
Almost the exact same, yeah. So fucking crazy. And also, in terms of like the actual, which is another thing that was really unusual about the video, it was like one of the first like SAG shoots of a music video, because most videos are non-union.
Still today.
And exactly. I've done several non-union music videos, and John Landis insisted that the extras and the dancers come in at least 2 weeks prior to rehearse with the choreographer, which at the time was unheard of. Yeah. So he's like, we got to make this, we got to make this as big and splashy as possible. Now, I like this part right here. The video itself was actually shot in 4 days, which is pretty cool.
And it's also really long for a music video.
Very long.
Usually one day.
Yeah, very much so. And also the theater that you see in the movie, the Palace Theater in L.A., which I actually, like over a year ago, I did a music video, and it happened to be down the street from the Palace Theater. I kept looking at the street. I was like, this shit is familiar. Something's familiar. And then I saw the Palace Theater. I was like, no way. No fuck. If you go on my Instagram, you see a picture of me in front of the Palace Theater in the exact spot that Michael and Ola Ray
It's very similar to your photo at Nakatomi Plaza.
Those are wonderful moments for me, man.
Dude, I'm with you, man.
Yeah, I was like, dude, this is it. Like, but the theater itself, the Palace Theater, is actually the same theater that John Landis used in the Kentucky Fried Movie, where they did the feel of thing, where like the usher, there's the same theater.
Well, again, if you're a director, go with where you know.
Yeah, and actually, if you see the marquee itself, it says the main sign says Vincent Price in Thriller, and of course, Vincent Price does the rap in the Thriller song, the darkness falls across the line, the midnight, and the crazy laugh at the end is Vincent Price, the iconic laugh. Because I've seen that reused in so many
over and over and over again.
So many different things, man. And it also has posters for different like movies. There's actually a poster for Schlock. There's a poster for one of Vincent Price's films, The House of Wax. You see those very clearly. And like I said, we talked about the choreographer for Thriller, Michael Peters.
Yeah,
you seen the Beat It video, right?
Yeah, well, and he's in this one too.
Yeah,
I've seen the Beat It video.
But he's the gang leader in White. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, and you see him like this super flamboyant guy and make behind the scenes, but like on the Beat It video, he's super tough, like he's a dancer, but he's still like portraying himself as a tough guy.
You can be a tough guy and a dancer.
Yeah. Now, one particular important aspect of the video, the girl.
Yeah, Ola.
Yeah, Ola. Yeah. Now, initially, the girl was supposed to be Jennifer Beals.
Really?
Yeah, Flashdance, Jennifer Beals.
I mean, that was big at the time. It makes sense.
But she turned it down for some reason. I don't know why, but she turned it down. Now, when Michael was informed of the girl that he actually picked, Ola Ray, he had not known initially that she posed nude for Playboy in 1980. And he didn't know nothing about that. Eventually, apparently, it didn't really matter. But,
He was a devout Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, so yeah, he was a little initially concerned, but then he's like, she's a pretty girl. She's a very nice girl, so they moved on past that. And also at the time, she was Jim Brown's girlfriend. So I don't want Jim Brown coming.
No, you don't want Jim Brown showing up at your house.
Jim Brown coming to the set of Thriller with a gun, coming at the Michael Jackson. You touching my girl? Like, oh, no, it's just a video, Jim. It's just a video.
What you gonna do?
Yeah, the Richard Pryor shit. So what you gonna do? The Jim Brown shit, man. Now, one thing that was actually unique about this, Thriller was the first time that Michael had actually interacted with a girl in a video, which was a breakthrough for him, because like mostly it
might have been his first time in life.
Probably no. There's a couple. Well, maybe I don't know, but Landis himself said
he was a sheltered man.
Yes, he was. But Landis
he's 25 too when he did this.
God damn it, let me talk.
Sorry.
As I was saying, Landis himself, you motherfucker, just keep interrupting me. Motherfucker, let me talk.
Go for it.
Okay, so he said that Ola Ray herself was actually crazy about Michael, and even to this day, I've seen videos of her recently. She's still crazy about Michael, but she was crazy for him. And she thought he had a great smile, and she made it very clear that had Michael propositioned her, she would have went for it. Yeah, she made it very, very clear. But Michael was actually 25 at the time of making this video, so he's very young. And apparently, a lot of celebrities came by the set. Marlon Brando, Fred Astaire came, Rock Hudson came. There's actually a great book about the photography of Thriller. And you see Rock Hudson, saying hello to Michael when they do the theater scene with him. And the girl.
Yeah.
So. And also the biggest cameo, the biggest celebrity that came to the set, the one that really shot John Landis, was late at night while they were shooting Thriller, and it was actually at the when they were in Vernon. They were doing that's where the Thriller was shot. The dance sequence was right by the meatpacking plant over there. So somebody comes to him, he's like, John, Michael would like to see you in his trailer. So Michael had a Winnebago, away from the set, or whatever. So John goes over to see Michael. He walks into the Winnebago, and as soon as he walks in, and Michael says, John, do you know Mrs. Onassis? And it was Jackie Kennedy standing there. Because her and Michael were working on a book together.
Yeah.
And they were friends, of course. And apparently John said one of the first things that Jackie said to him, I love the way those people spoke in Trading Places. He's just sitting
That's
there.
a great response from Jackie Kennedy.
And he was sitting there like dumbfounded. Like he said that's the only time in all the movies that he's done that he was legit dumbfounded. Like, that's Jackie Kennedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
everybody's got somebody who'll get them starstruck.
Exactly. So the exact filming locations for Thriller, the Palace Theater in downtown Los Angeles. The zombie sequence was actually filmed at Union Pacific Avenue and South Colosa Street in East LA, and the house sequence is actually in the Angelino Heights neighborhood. At the exact address is 1345 Carroll Avenue.
I'm sure they're happy we're putting the address back out there again.
It
might have just calmed down. How are you gonna get them going again?
I've seen a bunch of people freaking go take pictures in front of the house. I'm gonna find a house too. I'm gonna find this shit. So I'll do it eventually. Now Thriller itself actually had a world premiere on November 14th, 1983. It was actually premiered at the Crest Theater in Los Angeles. Yep. It actually had a private audience with a lot of celebrities, including Diana Ross, Warren Beatty, Prince, and Eddie Murphy. Now, Michael was actually in the production booth the entire time, and apparently Ola Ray was down there too. She kept telling Michael, "Come down there and join the audience." Michael wouldn't come. He just stayed in the production booth. He stayed in the projection booth the whole time, and then the audience gave it a standing ovation. And apparently Eddie Murphy was insistent, "Play it again, play it again."
It's short enough, definitely.
Yeah,
I'm with
exactly.
Eddie on that one.
Now the film itself had a very brief theatrical release. Basically, and what they did, they tied it with the Disney movie Fantasia.
Yep.
And it sold out every night. Apparently, some people were actually complaining because they're bringing their kids to see Fantasia, and then they see this werewolf thing with Thriller.
But it's not even scary.
And then
it's just fun.
And then the whole thing was a lot of people would come just to see Thriller and then just leave. But they did the theatrical release to qualify for an Academy Award, which it wasn't nominated, which it should have been.
Yeah, well, again, we can get to the Academy next week.
Exactly. Now, this video was actually the first of a couple of videos that John Landis and Michael Jackson did together. The first one was this one. The second one, the more weirder, even the weirder one of the two.
Which is
actually,
something to say.
Yeah, is Black or White.
Yep.
They did it in 91. And it actually, I remember this one because it had the big world premiere. And I don't remember, this is the first time I remember a music video having a simulcast world premiere because it debuted on Fox.
Yep.
Debuted on MTV and BET all at the same time. And it was just huge. And like I said, they had the full video, which was like I think a little over 10 minutes. Had the initial thing with the Macaulay Culkin and then the whole video stuff. And then they had the sequence with Michael dancing alone in the street, which was kind of controversial because he had the crotch grabbing and all that shit or whatever. But yeah, he said John Landis said Thriller was more his thing because he kind of steered it in the direction of like classic horror films.
Right.
Whereas Black or White was more Michael's thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And it very much shows.
Yeah, you can tell.
It's all over the place. Yeah. Now, in terms of the actual legacy of Thriller, of course, it's to this day probably the most watched music video of all time.
Well, according to Guinness Book of World Records, it's the most successful music video ever.
That's right. And it was actually voted greatest music video by MTV in 1999, by VH1 and Time Magazine in 2001, and on a survey that was done on MySpace in 2010 is also voted the most influential music video ever. It dramatically increased the sales of the Thriller album, which sold basically 1 million copies following its debut. It doubled the album sales, making Thriller, of course, the biggest selling album of all time, which it already was, but it just made it even bigger.
Yep.
And according to Landis, the response was a surprise to everybody but Michael. He knew what it was.
No, I mean, look, for whatever you want to say about Michael and his personal life or whatever, the two things the man knew dead cold, the music business and performing music.
Yes, sir.
Those two things are there. You can't argue.
That's right. And it's actually one of the things that kind of propelled Michael from just a really popular artist to the guy.
Yeah.
Because after Thriller, Michael was the dude. He was I think what it did for me, at least watching it, it made Michael otherworldly.
100%. I mean, it launched him into that. The only person that I could think of in modern American history prior to that was as big, you could even maybe argue bigger, was Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
And Elvis had a completely different road, different time, different things he had to work with. But Michael's the first guy who really bridged the gap between, there's all that famous song, was it Video Killed the Radio Star?
Yeah.
He bridged that gap from audio to video. And he honestly, it really transformed the business because, like we were kind of alluding to, late 90s, early 2000s, one of the things you had to do if you were trying to do anything in music was you had to have a killer video, right? So we can go there's the J-Lo videos, the Diddy videos. You got tons and tons of back when it was Puff Daddy, right? You go through those videos, they were essentially looked at from a business standpoint as loss leaders. So they would spend $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.5 million, just ridiculous amounts of money for these crazy, beautiful, over-the-top music videos because prior to Napster and all that craziness, the way you made money in the music business was album sales. Yeah. So they would always screw the artist in terms of you didn't get any of the album sales unless you were Michael Jackson or you were Ray Charles. You were the guy who you basically hoped people would come see you in concert. Sure. And then as we all know, or hopefully if you've been paying attention to it, once Napster and the internet and everything came in, it destroyed the worth of albums because there's so much sharing and everything else that goes on and flipped it. So now if you want to make money in the music business, you got to tour. Yeah. That's where all the money is. Now,
in terms of another thing alluding to the legacy of the video, Michael Jackson, of course, as we all know, passed away in June of 2009. In December of that same year, the Library of Congress selected the Thriller video into the National Film Registry.
Yep.
To this day, it is the only music video to get that honor.
It's the only one that deserves it.
It really does, yeah.
Because, I mean, even though we kind of alluded to it a little bit, you look at any other music video that we've got out there, there was no other music video that could really stand alone as a short film, right? Because what it really was he took a killer track from a killer album and he turned it into a musical, essentially.
Yeah, and then you go on YouTube and look up all the different videos of people doing the Thriller dance and then doing it in mass. Like one of the more famous ones is like the people in the Filipino prison.
Yeah.
Like hundreds of guys doing the Thriller dance.
Well, they've done it in flash mobs.
Yeah, and then I think the biggest flash mob that they ever did to this day, it was actually in Mexico City. I think it was over 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and, I mean, even again, talk about YouTube. If you look up the Thriller video right now, it's got over 500 million views.
That's right. Yeah, which is ridiculous.
It's insane.
Yeah, but that is Michael Jackson, man.
Yeah, again, the reason he was the king of pop.
Yeah. Okay, so you have anything else with Thriller?
No, I think that that brings us up.
We did it.
We did it.
We finished the John Landis thing, baby.
We did, even with the honorable mention.
That's right. Yes, which is really cool. Now, are we doing the show next week? Or?
Well, so I'm, we can figure this part out off air, but I mean, I'm good to go. I'm gone the end of the week, but I know you got stuff earlier on.
And actually, I was thinking, because of the fact it's actually the week of my birthday, folks, when our next show will be on.
JD Belser Appreciation Day.
That's right. So you can go on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll see it on Belserverse. If you go to the Belserverse pages, you will see Jadero Belser Appreciation Day.
You're gonna see it on Droppin' That Culture's Facebook page.
That's right. Give me a holler, man. Like, it's my birthday. You're gonna help me out. So I was thinking, because it is my birthday week, it should be my discretion as to what we watch.
Go for it.
And I think we should do a watch along.
Okay. What are you gonna do with watch along?
And it's actually a movie that I know both of us love, and we've been talking about doing since we started this thing.
Oh.
Blade.
All right. I'm on board for Blade.
So
I thought you were gonna go Major Pain, but Blade works.
We can do Major Pain, but I really want to do Blade.
All right, I'm on board. I
All
like
right.
that.
So our next show next week is gonna be a watch along, and we're gonna be doing Blade.
All right.
Wesley Snipes, 1998, dope ass fucking movie.
Hell yeah. With a dope ass veteran in it. We'll get to that next week too.
That's right, cool.
He was a badass.
All right, folks. So that has been Dropping That Culture for this week. Again, I'm JD.
And I'm AJ.
We'll see you guys next week.
Later.
Dropping that culture. 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 Dropping that culture.